What is going on, guys? Nate LaJoy here with Bleacher Report for our second annual Creator Mock Draft. This is like Christmas in the springtime for NFL fans. The draft is 1 week away, kicks off in Green Bay next Thursday, but today we have 32 teams represented by 32 creators. If you were here last year, you know exactly how it goes. Each member makes the picks for their teams. If you weren't here last year, welcome. You are going to have a great time. Now, the NFL draft obviously kicks off with the Tennessee Titans with the number 1 overall selection, followed by the Browns, Giants, Patriots, and Jaguars in the top 5. The rest of the top 10, the Raiders, Jets, Panthers, Saints, and Chicago Bears, really looking to improve on what has been a great offseason so far for Chicago. Now we have 11 through 15 represented by San Francisco and Dallas all the way down. But when you look at that 24th overall pick, you see the Cleveland Browns. Why are the Browns there? The creators made a draft trade. Last year we didn't open up the draft trades. This year we do. There's bound to be some craziness with these teams represented. But that being said, I say we take it to Minnesota and Cleveland to talk to these guys about why they made this deal. Let's start with the Cleveland Browns, who are moving back into the first round for their second selection of 2025.
Well, the Deshaun Watson deal, came back to bite us a little bit. The ownership has talked about that. They've talked about how much draft capital we put in, 3 first-round picks. We have been without a first-round pick for 3 years, and now we have an opportunity right now to be drafting at number 2. We wanted to be aggressive. We struck out the first time aggressively. We're going to have to be aggressive to get ourselves out of this hole. And getting in back in the first round gives us an opportunity to take advantage of either the running back market, which we feel is very strong, or possibly getting a quarterback late in the first round if one of those guys we have high on our board falls to number 24.
And now talking to the Minnesota Vikings, who made the deal, getting picks 33, 67, and 179. Really, in my opinion, a good haul for the 24th overall selection.
Yeah, it's not a big secret that the Vikings only have 4 picks going into this draft. So it was obvious that we wanted to make some sort of trade back. That was my main goal going into the draft. I think in general, a lot of Viking fans are hoping that you see the Vikings kind of make some sort of trade back. And still at 24 for our positions of need, there's no one there that I know for a fact's going to be there. And I kind of feel like if around pick 24 is going to be his position where I might have overdraft someone anyways. So I wanted to get back. And I think getting 67, which is basically a second round pick, was exactly what we were looking for.
All right. Thank you guys so much. Vikings, we might talk to you later in the draft. Cleveland, we will be coming to you shortly. But without further ado, let's get right back to the Tennessee Titans, the number 1 overall selection in the 2025 draft. They have been looking for a franchise quarterback for years now. Do they finally get him? What do you have?
So, yes, we're in a situation where we need a franchise quarterback for sure. If you look at our team, look at the fact that, we have a lot of holes on this team. But the biggest hole is at quarterback. And there's been a lot of discussion of Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, and those things. So I do have my card. I do have my draft card. That's available right here. I know everyone is waiting and wanted to understand where we are. I've had several people that have thrown some trades my way. And you know what I did with those trades? I nixed them all. I said no to everybody. I said, look, the Tennessee Titans, we need a franchise player. We definitely have a new stadium that's being built as well. So without further ado, the Tennessee Titans for the 2025 NFL draft, the Tennessee Titans selects Miami quarterback Cameron Anthony Ward out of the University of Miami. Welcome to Nashville. Cam is a quarterback, 4,300 yards last season. He's the NCAA all-time leading touchdown quarterback in the nation and in his career. This guy here, 39 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. This guy was a playmaker, man. And in the NFL, you just don't need a quarterback to sit in the pocket and count the flies that's in the air. You need a quarterback that can just do that and also move around the field as well. Cam Ward fulfills that position. The Tennessee Titans have had struggles at quarterback for many years. We were a 3-win football team last year. We were number 8. We only scored 18 points a game, 198 yards passing last year. As you know, that's not going to get it done. We get Cameron Ward. Welcome to Nashville, Cameron Ward. We got Cam Ward. Pick one. Welcome.
So the Titans obviously very, very excited about the potential to get Cam Ward. He's the overwhelming favorite right now to be the number 1 overall selection. But what do the Titans division rivals think about this pick? We bring in the Indianapolis Colts, Jacksonville Jaguars, and Houston Texans representatives to talk. Let's start with the Indianapolis Colts. What do you think about the potential of playing against Cam Ward twice a year?
I think this was a pretty obvious pick for the Tennessee Titans. You know, they struck out on Will Levis, obviously, needed a franchise quarterback, and you take QB1 in this class. Cam Ward's a guy that can really create with the football in his hands, really good deep accuracy. I think he will need to work on playing more in structure, and then there are still times where his mechanics can break down, but overall, he's a really solid player. I think, you know, where the Colts are at with their QB situation, certainly up in the air heading into this season. It's going to be interesting to see whether it's Cam Ward versus Anthony Richardson or Cam Ward versus Daniel Jones. But the Colts and Titans always play very, very tight games no matter who's at quarterback. I think that's going to continue. Certainly not thrilled that Cam Ward is coming into the AFC South, but I think the Colts are going to have some things up their sleeve with new defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo. His defensive scheme has been known to really thwart rookie quarterbacks, so it might be a little bit challenging for Cam Ward to come in and play well against the Colts, but I think overall Cam Ward has all the tools to be a really good player in this league.
And now throwing it to the Houston Texans, who did seemingly guess right on a quarterback early in the draft 2 years ago. What do you think about Cam Ward coming in, potentially facing C.J. Stroud twice a year?
Yeah, look, this is a move that Tennessee definitely had to make. The Texans got themselves a franchise quarterback. You can argue Jacksonville got themselves a franchise quarterback also. So Tennessee is trying to throw their hat in the ring with Cam Ward. I do like this move. He does have some weapons in the receiving room and the running back room. If Tennessee is able to build the offensive line through this draft, we might see some early success from Cam Ward, but this is something that they needed to do. And hey, good job, Tennessee. You got your franchise guy.
And a final word to Jacksonville coming from the AFC South.
Yeah, and there might be some Titans fans that are saying, hey, let's just trade back and get some more picks and maybe try to get a quarterback in next year's draft. But the margin of error in getting the number 1 overall pick is just as thin as actually being Super Bowl champion. So when you have the number 1 overall pick and you have a need at quarterback like the Titans do, just go out there and get your quarterback, and then the players and the personnel will follow that. But the most important thing is to lock in your franchise quarterback, and it feels like Cam Ward is miles ahead of better than any other quarterback in this draft.
And you know what? The Titans sure hope so. Now we're going to send it back to Cleveland, the number 2 overall selection. We just talked about the Browns trading back into the first round to number 24, but this is by far their more important pick. What do you think the Browns are going to do, and who are you going to take at number 2?
Well, you know, I think the draft starts right here. A lot of teams will be lining up behind us to figure out what they're going to do after we make this pick. But quarterback is a need on our board as well. Cam Ward, obviously, in our evaluation, was the top guy on the board. So we looked at a lot of different quarterbacks, and we did not have that big of a difference between some of our second-tier prospects like Shedeur Sanders. We've evaluated Tyler Shuck and some of those other guys, and even the guys later in Will Howard. We don't have that big of a gap on those guys. So when Cam Ward is off the board, we took our pick, ran to the podium, and we took what we believe is the best player in the draft. And we throw the word generation around a lot, but this guy might be it. We're going to take Travis Hunter, wide receiver, defensive back out of the University of Colorado.
Interesting pick. Now, I know a lot of people, there's a lot of speculation around this pick in general. A ton of speculation. But Travis Hunter, you said the word generational. I don't like using that word either. But this guy on both sides of the ball in college was tremendous. Heisman Trophy winner. is not really that big of a player, 6', 188, like you see on your screen, but he makes things happen on both sides of the football. Abdul Carter, also another guy that's really rumored to be selected with this pick. I guess we'll see where they go in real life, but you can't really complain getting one of the best talents we've seen coming out of the draft in the last few years. Now, let's send it over to the division rivals. Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and the Baltimore Ravens licking their chops after seeing this pick. Maybe not the pick that a lot of people anticipate, but I don't know if you can complain with it. Let's start in Baltimore.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think the draft does start in Cleveland. And, you know, even if the word generationalism was going to be used, I'd say polarizing. And I think Cleveland needs a polarizing talent like Travis Hunter on their team. I mean, they need something to go right for them. I think for Travis Hunter, it's just about the situation that he's going to go into. I think he needs to go into a situation where a team is going to use him the way that, one, he wants to be used, and two, the way that he has to be used. Now, Abdul Carter's intriguing at this pick, but I know there's injury questions about the foot. But with the trade that the Vikings and the Browns made, you know, you talk about quarterback, and is it a Shedeur Sanders, Jalen Milroe? I think that pick, if it's not a running back, could be used on a quarterback to help, obviously, take away some of the pain from that Deshaun Watson deal that just backfired in so many different ways.
Now, let's send it over to Pittsburgh. And my question for the Steelers is, Travis Hunter came out a couple days ago and said he wouldn't even play football if whoever drafts him wouldn't let him play both sides of the ball. Is that something that would fly with Mike Tomlin as the head coach? Pittsburgh, I believe you're muted. If you want to unmute real quick.
I think I'm unmuted. I think
There we go.
Now.
Got it. Gotcha. Yep. Perfect.
Sorry. Would Mike Tomlin let that fly? I think we would actually give him a chance to play both ways, but we're not getting Travis Hunter here. We're never bad enough to be picking in the top 5 like the Browns traditionally are. And this Travis Hunter thing, it is unprecedented, but I think it's unprecedented for a reason. Like, no one's done this really in the course of NFL history to be able to play both ways like this, the way that Travis Hunter did at Colorado. And I don't think the Browns are going to somehow unlock this and be capable of handling a player playing both receiver and quarterback. And we'll hear people say, but he did it in college, right? He just won the Heisman. I feel like going up against Kansas State and Texas Tech and those receivers and cornerbacks are going to be a lot different than George Pickens, DK Metcalf, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. And then whenever you play the Ravens, you got to chase Zay Flowers all over the field. And then, you know, whenever the Ravens are running the ball, they're going to be having Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry running it your way. And then the next series, you got to go to receiver, and you got guys like Darius Slay, JPJ, press coverage on you. Like, I just don't know how it's going to last, how this is going to be a sustainable thing for Travis Hunter. I mean, no one's done it before. I just don't think this is going to happen with the Browns, and the organization is going to be able to handle something like this, and they're going to be prepared for it. I think it's going to be more of a focus on how many snaps Travis Hunter's playing and how he's being managed versus just playing football and winning games.
All right.
I'm going to need y'all to find a quarterback.
Pessimistic in Pittsburgh.
Aaron Rodgers.
Pessimistic in Pittsburgh. How does Cincinnati feel?
I think the guy's a tremendous talent. Travis Hunter, he's had a lot of comps this week. They've even compared his footwork to Chad Ochocinco, which I agree with. If you listen to former wide receivers in the NFL like a Steve Smith, they talked about his route running. And there are a lot of corners. I thought the guy from the Steelers was cooking up until he told me about a 33-30 old Darius Slay. Like, I think that's a matchup that Travis Hunters of the world would exploit, like 1,000%. So in my mind, I just feel as though, like, Travis Hunter, a lot of people are overlooking of how good of a talent he is. I think he is. I think the $1 million question is, what is the quarterback? What's the system? And how does it work around him? I think there are going to be matchups that he'll be able to flourish in. I think he's amazing in zone coverage. I think he can make plays on the ball. There are going to be matchups where, as the guy pointed out from the Steelers right here, that if he's going up against Jamar Chases of the world, I don't like his chances. But
Yeah,
I
just
think
him and DK Metcalf on verticals all day.
It could happen that way. And, like, I just think that those are the things that, the people that get paid a lot of money, they got to figure out.
Now, the AFC North, routinely one of the most fun divisions to keep track of in the entire National Football League. We'll be talking to the rest of the representatives when they make their picks. But now we move to the number 3 overall selection and the New York Football Giants. Since winning a Super Bowl title in 2011 over the New England Patriots, they've made the postseason only twice. They now have the number 3 selection in the 2025 draft. How are they going to use it?
Authentic here representing the New York Giants, and this is definitely going to be a very, very difficult pick, considering the quarterback situation that we've had to deal with in the last 6 years. But this is a no-brainer for me. I think that we're going to run the card up to the podium, and we're going Abdul Carter.
Abdul Carter for the New York Giants. Some calling him a generational, and like I said, I hate using that word, but these guys are being described that way, generational talent off the edge at outside linebacker. Some people, most people honestly, calling him the best prospect in the draft. He was an absolute beast at Penn State, and he's a physical specimen at that. How do you see the Giants utilizing him, and do you think that they're going to have to move somebody a la a Brian Burns or a Kayvon Thibodeau in order to fit him into the rotation?
I mean, I think the great players like this, you're going to find a way to get them on the field. He's been able to play off-ball linebacker. He's been able to play edge rusher last year. We're talking about a guy with 56 pressures. He can definitely get after the quarterback. He can aid the difficulties that we've had stopping the run over the past couple of years here. So I think they'll find a way to be able to get him on the field. We drafted Kayvon Thibodeau in the first round in 2022, and that's kind of not panning out as well as we thought it would. Still a very capable player. So, worst case scenario, you're looking at a bit of a throwback to 2007, 2011, where we were utilizing the NASCAR package and using 3 and 4 pass rushers up front on that line. And I want to double dip and go get a defensive tackle in the next couple of rounds here as well, too. So I'm just looking at bolstering up the trenches. I think Abdul Carter absolutely brings that to the table for the Giants.
And as a diehard New England Patriot fan myself, trust me, I remember those 2007 and 2011 Giant pass rushes. They tormented my Patriots. We move to the NFC East, which is always one of the more entertaining divisions, much like the AFC North. What do the Washington, Philadelphia, and Dallas representatives have to say about the Giant pick? Let's start in Philadelphia.
Listen, I think you can always win by going in the trenches, especially when you get somebody who is this filthy. So just studying what we do a lot here, I know there's obviously question marks at the quarterback position, but they brought in Winston and Russell Wilson to hold the fort down, and I think that's pretty telling on maybe where they're leaning towards in this draft. So if you're going to buy into defensive line, edge rushers, offensive line, and just try to start with the trenches and build out from there, especially with the talent like Carter, I mean, that's the way you do it. So I like the pick. I like the idea.
And coming from an Eagles fan, we know that you guys won in the trenches this past year. Obviously, the Super Bowl champions reigning at this point. Washington, what do you have to say about this pick?
I agree with the Eagles. You definitely win a lot of big games in the trenches. But I think Washington showed last year, if you have the right quarterback, everything else falls in place. Jaden Daniels taking Washington to the NFC Championship game when no one expected it. So if I'm the Giants, I feel like you kind of have to lean Shedeur Sanders here, even if it might be too high. Even with Abdul Carter still on the board there, you can get some defensive players later on in the draft. I get it. Abdul Carter's a monster. I'm a big fan of his. But if you don't have the right quarterback, talking about the fort with Winston and Russ, that's not a very stable fort. So I just don't know how long that's going to last. What can you actually get next year with just Abdul Carter and either Russ or Winston starting at quarterback? So I feel like you should get the right quarterback, and everything else is going to fall in place for you.
Well, that being said, as a Washington fan, you guys thought that you had the right quarterback after the 2012 season. Look at what happened thereafter, Anyway, going to Dallas, probably the Giants' principal rival at this point. Philadelphia, I think, is, miles ahead of the Giants. So what do the Dallas Cowboys think about this pick?
Yeah, I think it's really chalk and low-hanging fruit to compare the pick to Micah Parsons, but it's that way for a reason, and it feels very similar, obviously. And I know a lot of people 4 years ago thought that New York was a place that Micah could land. Obviously, there was the trade that Dallas made with Philadelphia and New York trading out with Chicago in the Justin Fields move. And look, it's really difficult to screw up a top 3 pick, although I think you could argue that the Giants themselves did that 7 years ago. And so this is, I think, the best way to go about it. I understand the perspective feeling like you have to have the right quarterback. But I think if you're not in love with Shedeur Sanders, this is a way to make a strength something that can't be stopped, something that every other team has to deal with. We've seen teams in the division, teams like Dallas and Philadelphia and Washington, obviously not so much in the Jaden Daniels era, struggle against elite pass rushers. And so if you can start to fortify that, I think you can probably inch your way closer to 2007 and 2011. I think it's a solid pick for the Giants.
Gotcha. And you do mention the fact that it's difficult to screw up a top 3 pick. If you look at the history of the 3rd overall pick, there have been a lot of mistakes made in the last 20 years or so. So the Giants definitely in a precarious position being in that slot. Now, going to actually my favorite NFL team, the New England Patriots. Give me some hope, please. This has been a very hopeful offseason thus far for New England. Obviously, year 2 of the Drake May era. And Mike Vrabel also coming back to New England. Who are the Patriots going to select?
Well, given how the board has fallen here and understanding that one of these blue chip players did not unfortunately fall to 4, and understanding also that there was no trade down option, the New England Patriots are just going to go with the obvious move. They are going offensive tackle Will Campbell out of LSU. Now, in his final 2 seasons, he allowed just 2 sacks on 994 pass blocking snaps, and also had a 80.7 run blocking grade according to PFF. If you want offensive success in this league, you need a good offensive line. Look at some of the best offensive lines in the league. They come from some of the best teams in the league. Any type of offensive production, whether it comes from the running game, whether it comes from the passing game, all starts with the trenches. Mike Vrabel said when he was introduced into his press conference with the Patriots that they were going to heavily address the trenches this offseason. In free agency, they did that defensively, and I think in the draft, they're going to do that offensively. Drake May gets his blindside protector, and your big investments, whether it's Drake May, whether it's in the running game with Ramondre Stevenson and his extension, they now get a boost in production.
And I think over the last few years, we have all come to realize that a young quarterback's best friend is a solid offensive line. Will Campbell was a beast in his last 2 years at LSU. Like you said, only giving up 2 sacks in 2 years. Really incredible. Do you think that this could propel the Patriots, and the moves that they've made this offseason as well, do you think that they can creep back into that playoff picture?
I definitely think that they can be a dark horse team, especially given the fact that the trenches are the second most important thing in football, just behind quarterback. If the Patriots can draft Will Campbell, solidify that O-line, I believe that they have one of the better O-lines in the league, along with one of the better defensive lines in the league also.
Only allowing 5 quarterback hits, and I believe LSU played, 13 games last season? Unbelievable numbers. The AFC East division rival is going to come in now. What do the New York Jets think about Will Campbell going to New England?
I think it's a no-brainer. You look at the New England Patriots last year, they definitely lacked the playmaking, but they needed to invest in the offensive line. This tells me all you need to know about Mike Vrabel if he makes his decision. He is somebody coming from the Tennessee Titans. They're all about up front on the offensive line. Like Colby said, they invested heavily on the defensive side of the ball in the trenches, and now they're trying to do that on the offensive side of the ball. I think this is a no-brainer for the New England Patriots. None of the blue-chip guys like Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter was available, so this is a safe bet, getting Will Campbell. I do feel like he could kick inside. Obviously, some people are questioning if he could be a pure left tackle at the next level, but I do think he has a chance to be the franchise left tackle for the New England Patriots and protect Drake May's blindside for the next 5-10 years.
Optimism out of the Jets. How about Buffalo?
Listen, I really like this move. I mean, a lot of people have been comparing Drake May to the great MVP Josh Allen, so I get it. You want to protect your prize, and allowing 52 sacks last year, that's definitely going to raise eyebrows. So you get yourself a cornerstone left tackle to protect your franchise. Listen, you brought in Stephon Diggs. I see what the blueprint is. The blueprint is trying to follow what Buffalo has done. I see TD Finns laughing. You shouldn't be. But great move for the Patriots. Love what you guys are doing right now. Vrabel, listen, he's going to change things around in there. So that's a team that you got to really pay attention to. But that left tackle, you got to have a staple and protect your teams to have a future in New England. Great move by the Patriots. Can't fault that.
And lastly, in the division, Miami.
This is huge for the New England Patriots. Will Campbell is just not going to be a great left tackle. What many need to realize, if there's any inkling of a struggle at that position. He has versatility where he can push in or at any position pretty much on the line, in my opinion. This is the best of the best at the position. New England's a scary team now. They've geared up in the offseason. They have the right coach who has proven that he can win in this league. And I got to be honest with you, the team that should be most concerned are the Buffalo Bills. Many think that they've been great over the last 5 years, but the reality, they've been dealing with a division that has mightily struggled. Now that the Jets have a nice, good a new coach. The Patriots are on the rise, and I do understand the Miami Dolphins are in limbo right now, but this is an issue for the division as a whole. The Patriots might just be back.
To echo your sentiment, after winning, 17 out of 18 divisions, it is still odd to hear the Buffalo Bills chirping after winning 5 in a row and talking about being the blueprint when the Patriots were the blueprint for the entire National Football League for 2 decades. Anyway, let's go to pick number 5 in Jacksonville. The Jaguars really talk about a team that is in a weird state of flux the last year and a half after being the number 1 seed in the AFC through, I think, 8 or 9 weeks in 2023. They fell off a cliff. That continued in 2024. I think this is a very transformative offseason for them. But where do they go with the number 5 overall selection?
Yeah, things went bad pretty quick back in 2024. So the Jaguars now have a brand new head coach and a brand new GM. And what they have been preaching about is how they have to rebuild the trenches, right? So in free agency, what did they go out and do? They signed 4 offensive linemen to the Jaguars O-line. But what did they do on the D-line? They added nobody. So the Jaguars are going to go heavy on the defensive line in the draft, and that's going to start at pick number 5 overall. The Jaguars are going to be taking Mason Graham, defensive tackle out of Michigan. He is the best defensive tackle prospect in the draft, and he's also the safest and most polished. It feels like you know exactly what you're going to be getting out of Mason Graham. And with that said, he's a guy that has a high motor, excellent hands, it's just fantastic football IQ. It feels like he always knows where to be. And also, drafting him is going to help out the rest of the D-line. The Jaguars have really good edge rushers in Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker, and that is only going to elevate their ceiling on the Jaguars. The Jaguars will come away with Mason Graham at pick number 5 overall.
I cannot agree more with the sentiment that having him on the interior is really going to help out the exterior pass rushers. I think it's going to be a phenomenal pairing if indeed they do go with Mason Graham. We saw him absolutely be phenomenal for Michigan on their way to a national championship 2 seasons ago. And last year, 3.5 sacks, 7 tackles for loss, and 45 tackles total. I think that he's going to be a star in the National Football League. And honestly, I love this pick for Jacksonville. We bring back in the rest of the AFC South, active in the top 5, 2 of their teams being in the top 5 of this draft. Let's start with Tennessee after they pick Cam Ward number 1 overall, Jacksonville with Mason Graham at number 5.
Hey, Dalton. So I say this with Mason Graham. I think at this spot it's a reach for the Jags. I don't really think the Jags' issue has been on their defensive line. I mean, you have your ends in Josh Allen, you got Trayvon Walker, you got Devon Hamilton, you got talent on the defensive line. I think more than anything, Trevor Lawrence is like, please, somebody help me. Please, I need somebody to block in front of me. I was thinking maybe at this spot, at pick number 5, that you would get an offensive tackle. When you look at Anton Harris and Walker Little, those guys they're mid at best. So, I like the player, but I think it's a reach.
Reach out of Tennessee. Now, what does Indianapolis think about this choice?
See, I think it'd be a reach to take one of the offensive linemen because I think Mason Graham is a top 5 player in this class. You pair him with Trayvon Walker on one side, Josh Hines-Allen on the other. Tell them to go pin their ears back and go get the quarterback. Devon Hamilton is more of a run stuffer there in the middle. I really like this pick for the Jaguars. I think, as the Tennessee Titans get a quarterback, we all know what C.J. Stroud can do in the over there in Houston. Colts quarterback situation still up in the air, but there's a ton of athletic quarterbacks in the AFC South. You need to be able to go attack the quarterback in this division. So the best way to do that, load up on the defensive line. And I think need matches value here for the Jaguars. I'm interested to see the pass rushing upside for Mason Graham, only 3.5 sacks last year. So I think he will need to produce a little bit more than that as a 3 technique in the NFL, but he has all the upside in the world. And like I said, I think he's a top 5 player in this class.
The last time Jacksonville had a very good football team, 2017, a team based around defense, and they had a ferocious pass rush back then. What do the Houston Texans feel about this draft choice?
Yeah, I would have to agree with my Colts representative. I think this is a great move for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Mason Graham was a 4-star recruit, a 2-time state wrestling champion, a national champion in college. He's won wherever he has gone. And I just think, building a strong defensive line is what you need to do going forward in this league. You look at the Houston Texans, they got 2 dominant edge rushers in Will Anderson Jr. and Daniel Hunter. The Jaguars got 2 dominant edge rushers themselves, and now you're adding in a young defensive lineman in Mason Graham. Great move by them.
2 rave reviews. Tennessee going out on a limb saying that this was a reach. I don't mind it, though. I think that we need to get to the 6th overall selection, though. The Las Vegas Raiders. Talk about a transformative offseason. Pete Carroll coming in. Geno Smith coming in. It's going to look like an entirely different team on the field in 2025. This 6th overall pick, in my opinion, a relatively important one for the Raiders. They are in an absolutely loaded division. Where do they go with 6?
The Mish has been a very predictable draft so far. I'm going to throw a silver and black curveball here and go with Shedeur Sanders. I look at my division. The Chiefs have their quarterback, franchise quarterback, in Patrick Mahomes. The Chargers have their quarterback, Justin Herbert. Denver Broncos just drafted their quarterback last year. You mentioned Geno Smith, but that's a short-term contract. He's our guy right now at 34 years old. Now we draft Shedeur Sanders, and he can take the baton and be the starting quarterback for the next maybe 10, 12 years. So I'm taking the Raiders out of quarterback purgatory for the next 10 to 15 years and competing in the AFC West.
So do you really think that Shedeur Sanders, who did have a tremendous year this past year at Colorado, incredibly high completion percentage, I believe it was over 74%, do you think that that skill set is going to translate to the National Football League? We saw him struggle mightily in their bowl game against, in my opinion, probably the best defense they saw all year. Do you think that this is a smart pick for the Raiders? I know you said you're going to throw a curveball in here, but is it too much of a curveball?
Absolutely not. Taking a page out of the Falcons playbook last year when they drafted Michael Penix early. Again, we're solving the quarterback position for the next possibly 15 years. Shedeur Sanders, poised in the pocket, over 4,000 yards throwing, offensive, Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year, had no run game. His top rusher had 384 yards rushing total, had some bad offensive lines. We're going to get him some running backs on day 2, possibly out of Ohio State with Chip Kelly as our offensive coordinator. We have an offensive line. We'll work things out with Colton Miller, who wants a new deal. We'll surround him. We'll get him the supporting cast he needs. By the way, I talked to BR scout Dane Parson, compares him to Geno Smith, so it's a perfect segue to go from Geno Smith to Shedeur Sanders.
And you know what? That is a great point. Having a guy like Geno Smith in the locker room, a great mentor, I'm sure. I'm just not sure whether or not his skill set can translate to the National Football League. But you know what? There's only one way to find out. Let's get to the rest of the AFC West in here. The Kansas City Chiefs, Denver Broncos, and Los Angeles Chargers. Let's go to Kansas City first. Having lost in the Super Bowl, they're still looking for division supremacy. Do you think this gets the Raiders anywhere close to you guys?
I mean, you could have left out the fact that they flopped in the Super Bowl, my guy. But, Mo, I don't know. I mean, you can't have Daddy protecting you anymore. Meet Chris Jones. Meet Charles Omenihu. I mean, there's going to be a very heavy line coming for you in Kansas City. But, hey, I get it. You know, you want to have your younger quarterback be mentored by Geno Smith. Pete Carroll coming in there. I don't know if it's enough to fix Vegas, but I like the optimism.
Denver having really seemingly hit on a quarterback last year. Do you think the Raiders hit on one here?
I don't know. That's the thing. I like Shedeur Sanders. I really do. But as a team that led the NFL in sacks last year, when I watched Shedeur Sanders, what I kept on saying to myself, hey, he never saw a sack he didn't like. He took a lot of sacks at Colorado. And I think if you're the Denver Broncos, you're licking your chops. If this guy gets into the starting lineup sooner rather than later, that's a good thing for you because he doesn't have the same arm talent as the other quarterbacks in the division. And I think that, you know what, he needs that supporting cast, and I just don't know if the Raiders have it.
Fair enough. Now out to L.A., the Chargers. What do you think about this Raiders selection?
the last remaining AFC West team selecting in the top 10, and I'm not sure if this pick changes their fate in the future too much. I mean, to pass on Ashton Genty, Tator McMillan, Sanders, it's a big wait-and-see project. I think everybody else said it best. It's a very nasty pass rush in the AFC West, and the welcome to the NFL narrative is going to be real.
You know what? It all makes sense. Listen, he said that he was throwing us a curveball here. It might end up being a pass ball in the dirt, but you know what? There's only one way to find out. Now to the 7th draft choice. We go back to the AFC East. The New York Jets. Talk about a team that has had a tumultuous couple of years. Aaron Glenn, is it Justin Fields' time now? I guess we'll have to wait and see. What are they going to do at number 7?
Now, there's a big debate amongst Jets fans with this pick right here. It's split down the middle, right? It's either playmaker or it's offensive line. And I think last year's draft pick of Aldu Fashanu has gave the New York Jets the flexibility in this year's draft to go tight end. Tyler Warren from Penn State. I absolutely love everything about Tyler Warren coming in here immediately and providing an immediate impact as a rookie for this Jets football team that's going to be really stapling on a run game with Justin Fields at quarterback. Breece Hall's going nowhere. You got Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis. The offensive line, I absolutely love 4 out of the Jets' 5 offensive linemen. Yes, the right tackle is up for grabs. Armand Membu could have been the pick here, but I'm going to go with Tyler Warren, who can do everything. Block, run routes. He can even be a quarterback out of the backfield as a wild card. You could see him do so much out there as a tight end in this league that can do a lot. So Tyler Warren is a no-brainer pick. Last year, we were debating if we go Brock Bowers. He's a stud. But this year, we're going to go Tyler Warren, a big-time playmaker for the New York Jets to add in with Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, and the boys, with Justin Fields making his Jets season debut.
Now, I have to bring up the last time a tight end was taken that high, Kyle Pitts in Atlanta. Obviously, Tyler Warren, though, a phenomenal player at Penn State. Last year, 104 catches for over 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns. Was the best player on the field for the majority of their games. But definitely a risk. Let's bring in the rest of the AFC East here. Do you guys think a tight end is going to make that big a difference for the Jets? Let's start with New England.
Yeah, I think you look at the biggest hole still left for the Jets, and tight end is definitely still one of them. You look at what they did at quarterback this offseason, bringing in Justin Fields. Look, he's a veteran in this league. I think he still has some untapped potential from that 2021 draft, but he is wildly inconsistent, especially as a passer. Getting him a guy that can be an every down player, can help block for him, can help be a receiving threat in between the numbers, and can be that security blanket, I think is a great move. Tyler Warren really burst onto the scenes in Penn State this past year. Can't go wrong with him. And I think this is a crazy saying coming from a Patriots fan, but I think that he is the best all-around tight end since Rob Gronkowski.
Wow. Huge praise coming out of New England there. What do the Buffalo Bills think about this selection?
The Jets continue to make moves that make you scratch your head and say, what? I mean, I get it. Tyler Warren is a special player, but you have Ruckert. You have some capable tight ends already on the squad. You have a quarterback in Fields that would prefer to run with the football than rather pass with the football. So I just don't, I'm head scratching here. But you know what? The Jets will do what the Jets do. Good luck with it. You better hope that GM Richie can make up for it in the later rounds, because this one's a head scratcher. I love the athlete in what you get this tight end, but I don't know if that was the right move for your squad.
So I will say the name Rob Gronkowski was brought up. You look at guys like Travis Kelce, too, and even George Kittle, probably the 3 best tight ends in the National Football League over the last 15 years or so, were all taken in the 2nd round plus. I know Gronkowski was the 42nd pick. Taking a tight end this high, is that really effective? What does Miami think?
Well, I think that those other tight ends you mentioned play with the lead quarterbacks. They have Justin Fields, who's many believe a running back in this league. He has to become a better passer to make sure that he can maximize the tight end position to its fullest potential. And I don't think the Jets have that. And I think that they really missed out on a huge opportunity here to really have one of the better O-lines in the league with Membu. And even furthermore, if you didn't want to go that route, you could have went Ashton Genty and traded Breece Hall Hall because he has great value, because you got a lot of contracts coming up that you have to deal with, and Breece Hall is going to take up some of that money now. When you have Sauce Gardner, you have Garrett Wilson, you got to try to save money and get a great player for the future. Big miss by the Jets, in my opinion. Good player, big miss.
Jets fans shaking his head. Let me give you a little bit of time here before we go to the Carolina Panthers at number 8 to rebut what was just said about Ashton Jeanty.
Yeah, listen, Ashton Jeanty, I absolutely love everything about him, but I'm a big Breece Hall fan, and I really do think he's about to go crazy this season. We got Braylon Allen. I know Ashton Jeanty put out that little Players Tribune, and he wants to get drafted high, but Breece Hall is about to light it up this year, so I'm not even considering Ashton Jeanty as a prospect at all. But don't forget, Brock Bowers went early in the first round last year. Look what Brock Bowers did as a rookie at the tight end position. That's something to keep in mind.
He did. He indeed did. And now we go to Carolina, who actually, I think, down the stretch last season, especially the guy they got playing quarterback for them, showed signs of life in a division that is really one of the most volatile divisions in the National Football League. It's always wide open, seemingly. Can Carolina get into the mix this year? What do they do at pick number 8?
Well, Carolina, we are looking to make a trade with the Denver Broncos. We will be trading back in the draft. We have agreed to terms on picks. Carolina will be sending number 8 and 111 to Denver for number 20, number 51, and number 85, plus a future third-round pick in 2026. So a pretty good haul for the Carolina Panthers, who aren't one player away. We aren't 2 players away. We may not even be 3 players away. So we need to stockpile as many top 100 picks in a draft that's been deemed as something that's filled with guys that can be starters. And we just need an influx of young talent. So I'm definitely looking to stockpile picks, and I'm really, really happy with the trade that was able to come through here with the Denver Broncos. It was at the last second, but we got it through. And I really, really appreciate the business being done.
Definitely seem happy about it. Can't wipe the smile off your face. You seem so happy about it. What do the Denver Broncos think about this trade moving up into the top 10 after making the playoffs last season? Do you think this trade was worth it?
100%. You know, Ashton Jeanty said, come get the guy who they can't tackle, right? And that's what the Denver Broncos need more than anything at the running back position. They were top 5 the last 2 years in run block efficiency. And Javonte Williams, who's got the bulk of the touches for this team, hasn't been able to make anything happen. So you go get the best running back in a draft class where everyone says, hey, this is such a deep running back class. If it's a deep running back class, get the guy who's at the top of the class, right? Go get the best of the best. Don't wait around. Get the guy that you want. Ashton Jeanty is that guy that will change the game for the Denver Broncos. We saw what Saquon did for the Eagles last year, what Josh Jacobs did for the Packers, what Derrick Henry did for the Ravens. We want that in Denver, and Bo Nix needs a running game behind him. Now he's got it.
I called 2024 the year of the running back. There was a big-time running back renaissance after a few years where we only saw maybe a couple of guys a year go for over 1,000 yards. There were a lot of guys that were really establishing themselves as huge players in the National Football League in 2024. We have the trade details here. The Denver Broncos send the Denver Broncos get the 8th overall selection. They take Ashton Jeanty with it. They also get 111. Carolina moves back in the first round to number 20. We will be talking to you during the 20th pick. They also get 51 and 85. In my opinion, a relatively balanced deal here, but Denver cashes in on the 8th pick with Ashton Jeanty. Now, let's go back into the AFC West here. The divisional opponents, I think that this is a good move for Denver, getting the best running back in this draft. I really think maybe the best that we've seen in a couple years here. So, setting it up before we get to the exact Denver pick, the Tennessee Titans at number 1 selected Cam Ward. We're going to recap the draft choices here. Travis Hunter to the Cleveland Browns at number 2. Abdul Carter, the generational pass rusher, going to Big Blue at number 3. The New England Patriots getting offensive tackle Will Campbell out of LSU. Mason Graham going to Jacksonville at number 5. Shadur Sanders, called it a curveball. It is indeed going number 6 to the Raiders. Tyler Warren, maybe another curveball, going to the Jets at 7, and number 8 from Carolina, Denver goes and selects Ashton Jeanty. Ashton Jeanty, second place in Heisman voting this past season, was an absolute star at Boise State this past year. He's 5'11", or 5'9", 211 pounds. He runs the rock like very few guys that we've seen in the last couple of decades coming out of college. A lot of people think that he's maybe one of the more NFL-ready prospects in the entire draft after a couple of years where running backs were sort of, brushed off. The only running back taken this high as of late was Bijan Robinson to the Atlanta Falcons, but 2,600 yards, 30 total touchdowns. How can you argue with those types of numbers on 374 carries? He also had 138 receiving yards. Not great numbers, but he was toting the rock so much that he didn't really need to do anything out of the backfield receiving-wise. He was an All-America last year. But let's bring the division rivals back in here. Let's start with the Raiders, having taken Shedeur Sanders at number 6. What do you think about your division rival trading back into the top 10 and taking Ashton Jeanty?
Find it interesting that I had to spice it up first for everyone else to kind of spice it up and throw some curveballs. You're welcome, people. But by the way, I just have one question for Mr. Mile High. Do you think Ashton Jeanty is a generational running back? Because if he's not, this is a deep running back class. You can get a starter on day 2 very easily. So my question to you would be, is he that guy? Is he Mr. Gold Jacket? Is he a future Hall of Famer? Because if he's not, if he's just the best running back in his class, then why trade up and give Carolina that haul that you gave him?
I think he's the guy that's going to help you kick down the door against Kansas City, right? That's what you got to do in this division, is take the crack that's been given with what we've seen from Kansas City, a little bit of weakness in the armor this past year. And if the Broncos can put together a strong running game, they've got everything else. They've got a top 5 defense, got a quarterback who proved he's the franchise guy. All they're missing is that piece at running back, and Jeanty provides it.
I love the Denver defense. Like he said, could Ashton Jeanty be that last piece that Denver needs to get them to Kansas City's level? What do the Chiefs think about it?
I mean, I get Mo's point. This is a very deep running back class, but I also respect the move. I mean, this is your biggest need. You let Javonte Williams walk in free agency. He was your leading rusher for the past 2 seasons. So go out and get your guy. If this is the guy that's going to be able to fill that void, I get the aggressiveness. I like it. But I also understand, there's a lot that's going to fall in this class.
Lastly, a word to the Chargers.
I'm shocked. I'm offended. I'm appalled. I love Ashton Jeanty. I think it's a great move to try and establish an identity for this team with Bo Nix. And it's one that, hey, most of these draft picks, we're going to have to face up against. Mathematically, they're not all coming to the Chargers. I just wish Ashton Jeanty wasn't in the AFC West. Hard not to respect the move, but I hope it fails.
So definitely, trading up into the first round, going to get a guy that a lot of people are calling, that generational word, like we've said. But I think a solid move for the Denver Broncos all around. Now we go to the NFC South, the New Orleans Saints. Talk about a team that's really been in a weird sort of purgatory ever since Drew Brees retired. They've been in a weird spot. The Derek Carr situation. Is he injured? Is he going to get surgery? I don't know what's going to go on with that. But they select at number 9 in this draft. What are they going to do with a pick that high?
Well, you already alluded to it. I mean, the Saints have so many needs. I mean, they can go in any direction. They definitely need a quarterback, so that is something that's extremely important. But if you can't get the guy that you want, you can always go to different positions to get the guy that you want. So I feel the New Orleans Saints should select wide receiver Tetairoa McMillan. Look, 6'4", 213, 14 pounds. This is a guy that can fill a void that has been missing from the New Orleans Saints since Michael Thomas hasn't been with the team. I mean, getting the yards after the catch, the big catch radius, demanding a double team. You got some very talented guys like Chris Olave, you got Rashid Shaheed, you got your burners. But now you need that guy that can be able to get those tough catches, get those yards after the catch, and also be a really good red zone threat. So He's going to add to the offense, and I just think the guy's just a bona fide certified beast. So Teteroy McMillan is the pick, and he can come to New Orleans Saints and give them like instant success at the offensive side of the football.
And even just watching him at Arizona, a lot of people have compared him to Mike Evans coming out of Texas A&M. And at that size, with that sort of catch radius, you see why. 84 catches for over 1,300 yards last year, 8 touchdowns, was a consensus All-America in 2024. We bring in the rest of the NFC South. The Carolina Panthers, who traded out of the number 8 selection, Tampa Bay, and Atlanta. Let's start in Atlanta. What do you think about this McMillan pick? I believe you might be muted there, Atlanta. If you could unmute.
Absolutely, my fault there. Yeah, I like the move, man. What a way to pivot, to go and get the guy that you ultimately would need, and it's Tep McMillan, man. You mentioned all the credentials there. Adds to a quality of wide receivers that they have. Maybe could even, go in and spell some for Chris Olave, who's battled, but solid move nonetheless. Hate that he's in the NFC South, but solid move.
Now, I made a Mike Evans comparison. Let's go to the team that Mike Evans plays for, Tampa Bay. Does he remind you of Mike Evans?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love this pick. I think this was an excellent pick here by the Saints. Again, you get comparisons to Mike Evans and such a rich history in the NFC South of wide receiver play. Again, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Michael Thomas, Julio Jones, all these different types of elite levels of wide receivers here in the South. So I love this pick for the Saints. I understand and completely agree with those Mike Evans comparisons, and we see how that's worked out for Tampa Bay. Mike Evans has been one of the top wide receivers in the NFL, also just the top wide receiver for the Buccaneers for a decade plus now. That's the type of guy I think the Saints are getting here in a guy like Tet McMillan. So I love this pick. I think he is an excellent number 1 wide receiver for their offense.
And coming into this past season, I saw him even in the top 5 of mock drafts before the 2024 college football season. So he's been on, high draft radars for a long time. Let's finish with Carolina. What do you think about this selection?
Not gonna lie, I'm a little concerned because it's just another 6'4", 6'5" wide receiver in the division that we got to face off against. But we just spent a lot of money on the cornerback, put him about $100 million on J.C. Horn, so he's going to definitely earn that check there. But Tep McMillan was my target. I was going to look for him initially, but the trade came here kind of at the last minute, so I ended up having to jump on it when the opportunity was there. So it hurts to see him actually go to a division rival, but it kind of is what it is. You kind of take what you can, man, and you got to live with the consequences, I guess. But I like the pick. We'll see what they do at quarterback. I know my man was hoping Shedeur would fall to him, so we'll see what he does later on in the draft, maybe with the quarterback. But definitely a factor with that Tep pick, so I can respect it.
Definitely creates a formidable tandem at receiver. Chris Olave, who's been a Pro Bowler already, and McMillan with the 9th overall selection. Now, rounding out the top 10, we go to Chicago. What an offseason they've had. They've completely rebuilt their offensive line. They bring in Ben Johnson as their head coach. I don't know if maybe since probably 2018-ish, there's been a more exciting time to be a Chicago Bear fan. What do they do rounding out the top 10?
What we do here is that we're going to continue building out that offensive line, and we're going to take Armand Mbao here. Tackle, one of the best tackles in this draft. I think he has a tremendous upside when it all comes down to it as well. Whether he ends up having to eventually move to guard, I think he'll be successful there either way. The Bears are revamping the trenches, and that is an important thing to keep doing that, to keep rebuilding those trenches and putting themselves in a position to where that offensive line is no longer something that holds them back. We know he's amazing in run blocking, his tenacity, his strength, the technique that he already has as well. He has a lot of room to grow on top of that. I'm betting on Armand Mbao to turn into one of the better offensive linemen in this draft.
And I have talked to a couple of draft prognosticators that are in love with Mbao. I really think that he has one of the highest upsides of anybody in this entire draft. We saw him at Missouri last year have a phenomenal season. But let's bring in the rest of, and for the first time today, the NFC North. You see the statistics on the screen. He allowed 12 hurries, no quarterback hits last year. That's unbelievable, I feel like. I don't even know how that's possible. But when you bring in the rest of the NFC North, Green Bay, Minnesota, and Detroit. Let's start in Detroit. What do you think about the Bears really, in my opinion, this offseason creating one of the best offensive lines in football when they had one of the worst last year?
Yeah, I personally think this felt really well for Chicago. I think coming into the draft, I think this is the right approach. I think solidify the offensive line. I know there's conversation about running back. Obviously, they didn't get that option here, but I don't think just because Swift was traded doesn't mean that Ben Johnson doesn't like Swift necessarily. That's a front office move. That's a contract decision. I think you build out that offense line, you finish it. You finish what you started. And for me, Membu is going to be a guy that, of course, there's flexibility there along the offensive line. We've seen him play unbalanced sets on the opposite side as well, so I trust the flexibility. I think he's a diverse run scheme fit. And in pass protection, I have some little knocks there, but ultimately the athleticism, the looseness, this is a player that's flying up, I think, all for the right reasons. He's done everything right since the draft has ended. And I think this is the right way for the Bears to continue things because, to me, the one thing that makes it not work for Chicago is that offensive line isn't really good. Everything else, Ben Johnson's probably going to take care of it.
And now to Minnesota, who really, is one of the best teams in football right now. This is one of the best divisions, if not the best division in the NFL. It was unbelievable last year. We'll see this year if they can maintain that level of play. But does this get Chicago to the level of all of those playoff teams?
I mean, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that. Maybe Genty. I was kind of happy to see Genty not make it here. It makes tons of sense. Chicago came in and did a lot of work in the offseason. A lot like us on the offensive line. You watch how the Eagles won in the trenches on both sides of the ball there. It made sense. Chicago, before offseason even started, they started attacking that offensive line. So with Genty not there, it made a lot of sense to protect, do whatever you can do to not let Caleb Williams run for his life like he did last year. So I do think this was a good pick for how everything fell. And at the end of the day, again, glad it's not Genty.
And now lastly to their arch rival, the Green Bay Packers. Is that a Don Majkowski jersey in the background that I see?
It is. Yes, it is.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, so I hate this pick because it's such a great pick. Mbao is a guy that I think a lot of people would consider even tackle one in some senses. A lot of people do have Will Campbell over him, but Mbao is a great prospect for them, a guy that could kick in eventually. I like what the Chicago Bears are doing with their offensive line. That was obviously their biggest issue last year on that offense, adding Joe Thuney, signing Drew Dahlman, adding Jonah Jackson. Darnell Wright took a step up in 2024. They're really rebuilding through that offensive line. It just feels like that's something Ben Johnson really wanted to do, and that's exactly what they're doing. And I think this is tremendous value. Although they got left out on Ashton Genty, which I'm happy about, there's still plenty of other running backs in this draft class they could get in the second or third round. So I think it's an excellent pick, as much as I hate to say it.
Great insight from the NFC North. And now we move out west, remaining in the National Football Conference. But we go to San Francisco, a team that came into 2024 as maybe the prohibitive Super Bowl favorite. Their season goes up in smoke, much like the 2020 season for them after going to a Super Bowl in 2019. They go to a Super Bowl in 2023, have a down year in 2024. How can they rebound in 2025? And what are you going to do with the 11th choice?
Yeah, I think it's simple for the 49ers. I mean, when you look at what happened to them this offseason, they lost a lot of defensive players, and you got to build and win in the trenches. So offensive line, even though we can improve here, there's players here that are still available. We're going to go with the defensive front, and we're going to go with defensive tackle Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss. You're looking at a versatile defensive man up front. He can play the 3 technique and 4-3. He can play the 5. He can play all over that front, and this gives the 49ers multiple looks to with 5-man fronts up front. They could do a lot of things with a guy like Walter Nolan out there. He's got a good run stop rate, good pass rush run rate. It's hard to say that. But Walter Nolan, I think, is going to be a solid pick for the 49ers to build that defensive line after losing Javon Hargrave and some of the other key defensive linemen that they have lost over the past few seasons.
And you love a guy that played in the SEC as well. He is certainly battle-tested having played at Ole Miss. 14 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks, and 48 tackles total. Another guy that was a consensus All-America, first team SEC, selection. Can't go wrong here. San Francisco has a lot of rebuilding to do. They lost a lot, specifically on the defensive side of the ball this offseason. I think this is a solid start to building that unit back up. Now we go out west, the NFC West for the first time here. The Arizona Cardinals, we have the LA Rams and the Seattle Seahawks also represented. Let's start in Arizona. What do you think about this Walter Nolan pick?
This is a really solid selection. It does suck, though, because this is one of the most disruptive players in the class. He gets after the quarterback. I believe he had 6.5 sacks. I'm not looking forward to this. Kyler Murray will probably be running for his life a little bit, but that's okay. I mean, Seattle re-upped. Of course, the Rams have Jared Verse. Now you're bringing Walter Nolan, just another stud to the NFC West. It's unfortunate.
I mean, Kyler Murray, I feel like his entire career he's been running for his life anyway in this division. Yeah. But Seattle, you talked about Seattle really getting better on the defensive side of the ball. What do you think about this Walter Nolan pick for your division rival?
I think it makes sense in the sense that the Niners have lost a lot of their talent on the defensive line over the last couple of years. They are letting Javon Hargrave go this offseason. They really needed to replenish in the middle, so I definitely understand that side of it. I will say with Walter Nolan, I think that he still has a ways to go as a skilled pass rusher. I think he wins mostly based off of speed and bend. And that next part of his game is going to have to come along over the next couple of years. He's going to actually have to develop a diverse and well thought out rush package. And I do wonder how he's going to be able to hold up against double teams because he is a little bit of a leaner guy. But I do believe Walter Nolan will be a good player, and I'm not thrilled to have to deal with him over the next couple of years.
And you bring up his development, what better place than Kyle Shanahan's coaching staff, routinely one of the best in the National Football League. Let's finish, with the Los Angeles Rams, your in-state rival. What do you think? I believe you might be on mute there, LA Rams.
All right. I'm not the biggest fan of Walter Nolan personally. I don't have a first-round grade on him, so I do feel like it's a bit of a reach in that sense. I think position makes a lot of sense. And like you said, I mean, you could just pick anything, and you can't go wrong here. The 49ers are rebuilding. I think ideally they would have wanted Membu to fall since they want a guy after Trent Williams, of course, retires. But I was really surprised they didn't go with a guy like Will Johnson or a Jahdae Barron. I think they would have really been utilized correctly in this defense, now that Robert Saleh is back. I think that would have been a chess piece for him. I probably would have gone with Barron here, and maybe even a linebacker in Jalen Walker that could also work as an edge. I think this is a reach for Walter Nolan personally, but I do get the fit.
And now we go to another traditional NFC power that is sort of fallen on tough times. 2024 was certainly a difficult year for the polarizing Dallas Cowboys. They select number 12 in 2025. This is the highest they've picked in a few years. What are the Cowboys going to do?
Yeah, highest pick the Cowboys have had since 2021 when they ultimately traded back from 10 to 12 where they currently sit, landed Micah Parsons, so it worked out well. I've had my eye on Ted McMillan this entire time, so certainly a bit bummed to not walk away with him, but this is the kind of draft where when you're picking in this slot, you feel like you have a number of options. So Matthew Golden is the pick for the Dallas Cowboys. The team is in sore need of an option opposite of CeeDee Lamb to really help the offense return to some form. CeeDee really hasn't had a proper running mate in the offense since the Cowboys traded away Amari Cooper, and we all know how infamous that was.
So Matthew Golden obviously staying in the state of Texas, going from Austin to Dallas. This honestly just screams a Jerry Jones draft pick. It really does. The speedster ran a 4.29 40. He's a little undersized at 5'11", 191, but he made big play after big play at Texas. And like I said, staying in the state, I think, is a solid move for Dallas. This might be considered a little bit of a reach, but I think it's a risk that they have to take. Last year, Texas went for 54 catches, just under 1,000 yards, and scored 9 touchdowns, and was also named in 2023 second team All Big 12. Now let's bring the rest of the NFC East in. Like I said before, always one of the most lively divisions as it comes to debate. Washington, what do you think about Dallas going and getting a number 2 receiver?
You know, I personally love Matthew Golden. That's someone I said back in like November because I live here in Austin, Texas. This is the guy that you should be watching, not Isaiah Bond. This is the better prospect in my opinion. So it does feel like a Jerry Jones type of pick, but, you know, CeeDee Lamb needs some help. That window is closing for Dak Prescott and the Cowboys, which I'm fine with. We can slam it shut for all I care. We've made it to the NFC Championship. But I think this is a great pick. The wide receiver draft doesn't really impress me too much out of these top 5. After that, it kind of falls off. So I think this is the spot to take it. I wouldn't wait on a premier wide receiver if you're the Cowboys. So I wish I could hate the pick, but I honestly love it because I've been high on Golden for a while.
Now, the Giants hit on a wide receiver in the first round last year, albeit a little bit higher up in the draft order. Number 12, what do you think about Matthew Golden?
I like the pick. I don't think this is, up there with a guy like Malik Neighbors or anything like that. And I do agree with the Cowboys content creator that Tedero McMillan might have been a better fit considering that CeeDee Lamb takes about half his snaps from the slot as well. When banking on Matthew Golden, you're talking about banking on the projection. He really didn't show that he was a wide receiver 1 until Isaiah Bond was out of the lineup. So you are banking on projection. I like his route running, crispy. I do think that 40 time might be a little bit skewed. I'm not too sure what the clocks were looking like that day. But when you look at Matthew Golden on the field, I don't necessarily see a 4.29 guy, but I see a guy that can come into the league and have a lot of success.
And now lastly, with Philadelphia, about their thoughts.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's obviously a weird spot for the Cowboys. I don't really even know how to describe them. So if you're going to try and get back to like a good foundation and try to get something going offensively with Dak, and we've seen it over the years with some of their wide receivers and Zeke when he was in his prime, and you could see that there was substance there offensively. I don't even know what they are anymore. So if the idea is to get back to some form of identity, I think this fit kind of, screams that's maybe the mentality, and it's hard to go against that because they are out of whack right now.
All right, so Matthew Golden getting 3 solid reviews from his division rivals. Now, we look at the best available prospects here. Still some real blue chippers. 4 and 5 on the big board still available. Malachi Starks, the safety, out of Georgia. Will Johnson, corner, out of Michigan. Jalen Walker, Jahdae Barron, Colston Loveland still on the board. A running back like Amarion Hampton still there as well. So a lot of big names, even through 12, still hanging on in the draft, specifically those guys that were at 4 and 5 in the big board. Some big-time defensive players. We see, 8 out of 10 defensive players on the big board so far. It's been relatively even thus far, unlike last year where there was just an absolute wave of offensive players in this part of the draft. But we go now to the Miami Dolphins. You said it yourself before, a team that's in a weird state of flux right now. Maybe a little bit of purgatory setting in here in Miami, but I think this 13th pick could help them get out of it.
Well, the 13th pick, I've tried very hard for it to help me get out of the purgatory state. Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, we got you. Loud and clear.
Okay, I'm sorry. The 13th pick could help us get out of the purgatory state. And we have a good player here. What I will tell you as the Bleacher Report, Miami Dolphins general manager, players that fell to the Miami Dolphins that we absolutely love right here. So what I did is tirelessly worked very hard behind the scenes trying to trade down, and it just didn't work. We wanted extra picks to try to double up, maybe get an extra day 2 pick so that we can fill some of the many positions that we have right now as a whole. But we're stuck at 13, but we love 4 players. And with the 13th overall pick, the Miami Dolphins will select Will Johnson, cornerback out of Michigan, ladies and gentlemen. I know a lot of people like Jahdae Barron, but we love Will Johnson. We love his height. We love his ability to play off the ball. He keeps his eyes on the quarterback. He baits receivers and quarterbacks in the jumping routes. He can turn the ball over and make plays and help the offense when they struggle. So we decided to go Will Johnson out of Michigan. We love this pick. Welcome to Miami.
A lot of people are really, really high on Will Johnson. We saw him be the focal point, or one of the focal points, of a Michigan defense that has been great the past couple of years. Obviously didn't play as much in 2024. But that being said, Will Johnson, I think, is a great fit in Miami. We've seen the Dolphins whiff on a couple of defensive backs in recent years in the draft, though. Noah Igbenogany, Cam Smith. They hope that Will Johnson isn't cut from that same cloth. 2 interceptions, 14 tackles, and a tackle for loss last season. 2023 first-team All-America, and now the 13th overall pick in the Creator Draft. Let's bring the AFC East back in. Buffalo, New York, and New England. Let's start New England. What do you think about this? What do you think about this draft choice? Excuse me.
I absolutely hate it. I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, you need help in the trenches. Offensive line, defensive line. Like I alluded to earlier with my pick, that is the second most important thing in football. You need to get pressure on the quarterback defensively. Offensively, you have to protect Tua. You know that he is such a valuable piece to your offense. TD, this is something that you have said on your channel several times. And if you're going to get your return on investment on your offense in general, it starts with blocking and it starts with protecting Tua. You didn't do that here. You could have went the defensive line route. You didn't do that, and I don't even think you went the best cornerback. I would have went with the guy with a little bit of the higher upside in Jahdae Barron. I understand that it does fill a need, but I think you could have gotten someone better here.
New York Jets, what are your thoughts?
I pretty much agree with everything Colby said. First of all, didn't get the best corner on the board right here. I think Jahdae Barron would have been the better pick. And also, what happened to the trenches? The Miami Dolphins keep ignoring the trenches. Tua Tagovailoa needs to be protected in order to survive back there. Hopefully he can stay healthy, because if he's not healthy, you got Zach Wilson backing him up. Miami is stuck in purgatory, and I know Will Johnson, it's nothing against him. I do think he's going to be a really good, solid player here. But let's not forget why they have to go Will Johnson. It's because Jalen Ramsey's on his way out of town. The Miami Dolphins are stuck in purgatory, and they got a long way to go before they're going to be starting winning some football games and even contend for the AFC East.
All right, 0 for 2 from the rest of the AFC East. What do we have for Buffalo?
If you could freeze frame on TD's face right now, that's the sad look of the Miami Dolphins. I mean, you had an opportunity to bolster the O-line. You had an opportunity to protect your quarterback. If you can't protect your yeah, there it is. That's his look. That's the look. Confusion. They don't know what's happening. There's too much going on. And that's exactly what Miami, there's too much going on in Miami. You got to fix the defense. You got to fix the offensive line. And then, listen, the player himself is great. Great zone corner player, but you needed help in the trench. Buffalo's coming after you. New England's coming after you. It's a hot mess out there in Miami. But great pick. You needed it. Jalen's gone. You had to replace him. You had no choice. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. But you're going to pay for it in the trenches. That's for sure.
0 for 3. That's the first pick that has been completely panned by the rest of the division. Now we move to Indianapolis. Another team that's in a weird state of flux. Really, this part of the draft is all teams that didn't really, stink in 2024, but weren't good enough to make the postseason. Picking at number 14, we go back to the AFC South. Indianapolis, what do you have for us?
So the Indianapolis Colts headed into this offseason needing to really rehaul their secondary. They did that in free agency, getting Charvarius Ward, Cam Bynum to pair with Kenny Moore. That allows the Colts to look on the offensive side of the ball. And yes, the quarterback situation is in flux, but the Colts still aren't giving up on Anthony Richardson. But where they need help, the tight end position. Last year, the Colts tight end group was the second least productive unit in the NFL, and 25 tight ends across the league had more receiving yards by themselves than the 467 yards that the entirety of the Colts tight end group produced. That's why with the 14th pick in the 2025 NFL draft, the Indianapolis Colts are selecting Colston Loveland, tight end out of Michigan, the third Michigan Wolverine that will go in the top 15 picks. And honestly, I think it's a great fit for the Indianapolis Colts. Colston Loveland standing at 6'6", 248 pounds, a former first team All Big Ten last year. Even though he had the shoulder injury, was still able to be a second team All-American, second team All Big Ten, and a finalist for the John Mackey Award. Listen, Colston Loveland is a mismatch nightmare. He is the best route runner of the tight end group in this class, and he's a dynamic weapon at the tight end position, something the Colts desperately need. He can line up anywhere on the field to be a mismatch, however, for whoever is trying to guard him. And he also has upside as a blocker. Entering an NFL strength and conditioning program, he's going to add some mass to his body, and he has the full potential to be tight end 1 for the Colts and tight end 1 from this draft class. So Colston Loveland, immediate contributor to the Indianapolis Colts offense, gives Shane Steichen a movable chess piece to control the seam, be a threat on third down, and give Anthony Richardson a security blanket over the middle of the field.
Young quarterbacks, solid tight ends, a great combination for success. 56 catches for just under 600 yards and 5 touchdowns last season, was even better in 2023. I really like this pick. He's really the modern tight end, not really a guy that's going to have to block a lot because he's such a great receiver. Now let's bring in the rest of the AFC South, really active in the top 14 so far. We've seen picks from 3 of the 4 teams in the division. Tennessee, what do you think about Colston Loveland going to Indianapolis?
I actually agree with this pick. I do think, when you look at the Colts, you have Jonathan Taylor, you got Michael Pittman and Alex Pierce. You got a really good offensive line as well. They've been strong there. Of course, Quentin Nelson, maybe a future Hall of Famer to that. I think even defensively with some of the players they've added with Charvarius Ward and those guys, I think the Colts' roster is starting to improve. I think tight end is for sure their weakest spot. And historically, the Colts have done very well at the tight end position with guys like, Dallas Clark and those guys. So I think he fits the bill. I think this is a great pick at this spot to get him Colston out of Michigan.
Jacksonville, thoughts on the Loveland pick?
Yeah, tight ends for me are always really hard in the first round. And I say that because when you look at some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, they're all kind of found in the first round, right? But when you look at the tight end group, tight ends are found all over the draft. And more often than not, they are found on like day 2 and day 3 of the draft. And a lot of, tight ends in the first round don't really live up to their draft hype. But with that said, if Loveland can turn into a real dual threat guy, can hit you down the field on a deep ball, and can also, help block the edge guys, and he turns into maybe a Travis Kelce type of player, I don't think anybody is going to be complaining. But I do think that this pick is up in the air, and you got to probably wait a couple years to see if they've really hit on this pick.
Now, Houston, I'm going to ask you a different kind of question here. Assuming Loveland goes to Indianapolis, which quarterback do you think would utilize him better, Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson?
I would think Anthony Richardson would have used Colston Loveland the best. Anthony Richardson is good at scrambling, and finding your tight end on the move. I think is something that that Colts fans would like. You don't want to give up on Anthony Richardson just yet. I do like this move for Indianapolis. You can argue that Colston Loveland is tight end 1, and it would not surprise me one bit if he's a top receiving option for Indy right out the gate.
Good review for Anthony Richardson. Good reviews for the Colston Loveland pick. Now at the 15th selection, the Atlanta Falcons. A funky year for Atlanta in 2024. Kirk Cousins starting just about the entire season before getting benched before their last 3 games in favor of 8th overall selection from last year, Michael Penix Jr. This is certainly a new era in Atlanta. Where do they go with this 15th overall pick?
I don't think the Falcons are going to surprise anybody like they did in last year's draft, taking Michael Penix 8th overall. The need has been and always will be until we get it right, the edge position. Falcons still struggling to get to the quarterback, historically trash in that department, only 31 sacks last year. So I look for the Falcons to get their guy at 15, and Mike Green out of Marshall University, leader in FBS in sacks with 17, also led defensive lineman with 84 tackles. This is an explosive kid, twitchy athlete, just a force. And we saw what he did at the Senior Bowl, putting Josh Carnley on his behind, man. Just the kid plays with a power and an effort, and really a mentality that we haven't had since the days of John Abraham here in Atlanta.
6'3", 251. And I'll tell you what, coming from a small school like Marshall, you have to compare him to Khalil Mack coming out of Buffalo. I'm not going to go that far yet, I promise.
Thanks.
I'm not going to go that far, but it's certainly a comparison that begs attention. 84 tackles last season, 23 tackles for loss, and a staggering 17 sacks, a first-team All-America Sun Belt Player of the Year on the defensive side of the ball. This guy is incredibly impressive, and I think he could very well wreak havoc in the NFC South. What did the division rivals think about it? Let's start in New Orleans.
I think it's a good move. You know, I like Mike Green a lot. Got opportunity to really check him out. I cover Coastal Carolina, so I watched him up close. I mean, this guy has a high motor, man. It never just stops. And I do agree with Berto. I mean, the Falcons need that elite pass rusher. I think if they get that, I think they'll find success. You know, you've seen it down the stretch. You know, when they went on a little bit of that losing streak, you know, a couple of games, they allowed their defensive linemen to kind of pin their ears back, and they found success. So hopefully this guy can be that leader that they need. So I think it's a good pick. It's a position of need, and I think Mike Green will give you instant success.
Carolina, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty expected for me. I think they've been connected to Mike Green pre-draft a lot as well. You talk about production, this dude has it. I mean, nobody has more sacks in this class than Mike Green. I'm a little concerned, obviously, about him versus the run. The lack of arm length is there a little bit, so he can kind of get bodied a little bit by bigger tackles, and there's a couple good tackles in this division that's not really in New Orleans, but just between Tampa and Carolina. But, I mean, I do like Mike Green. They need this in the worst way, and he's a productive guy, and so, I mean, it makes sense.
Now, Atlanta's pass rush, like you said, has been pathetic for, lack of a better term, the last couple of seasons, ranking last or near last in the National Football League the last 3 seasons. Buccaneers, what do you think about this move to bolster that unit finally?
Yeah, I think that's a great move that Berto made there for the Falcons. I mean, you saw last year they tried a few different things and bringing in some different guys, and just nothing worked, right, in terms of bringing in Judon, and they need a number 1 guy, right? So they got that guy in Mike Green, in my opinion. I think this is absolutely a fantastic pick by the Falcons here. They get a number 1 guy that had so much good production at the college level, and I think he will continue to do that as a pass rusher here in the NFL level. So overall, great pick.
3 thumbs up from the NFC South for the Atlanta Falcons pick. Now we move back out west to Arizona, the 16th overall selection. The Cardinals, I mean, really for much of 2024, were competitive, which a lot of people didn't expect them to be coming into last season. 16th overall pick, what are you doing with it?
I don't know if it went through yet, but I just traded the pick with Detroit, so Detroit should be jumping up if I'm not mistaken. So,
all right, let's actually bring the Detroit Lions and Arizona Cardinals in here if we can while we get the trade details. It's being finalized. It's going through the league office right now, guys, okay? We just have to, make sure that it gets final stamp of approval on it. Kidding, of course. But while we can, let's bring both Detroit and Arizona in to talk about the details behind this trade. Arizona, what are you giving up?
I'm giving up my 16, 152, and a 5th next year to get 26, 60 this year, and then an additional 3rd rounder next year.
Roger that. In Detroit, why did you go through with this trade? I assume because you wanted to move up in this first round?
Yeah, we had a lot of conversations, man, behind the scenes. But I'll tell you what, I'm jittering a little bit right now. I can't believe we walked away with this. So our top player, do you want me to tell you who the player is that we're drafting right now?
Go right ahead. Here we go. Yeah, we will announce the 16th pick right now for the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, the Detroit Lions got a guy they think is top 5 in this class. We're walking away with Jalen Walker. We're going to put him opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. And I think that he's got a case to be number 2 pass rusher, number 1 pass rusher. He's one of the only guys that have gone through given an elite trait grade. I believe he's an elite blitzer. I buy into the fact that he can play multiple positions. I like him at off ball, but I love him on the ball. I want that guy pinning his back and going. I hear all the Micah Parsons conversations. People say Abdul Carter's like Micah. I believe Jalen Walker is Micah Parsons. All the measurements kind of align that as well. I think this dude's going to be special at the next level. And as you can tell, I'm shaking, man. I can't believe we got this done. I hope this happens. But it did today, and I feel really good about it.
And it's funny because he shares a name with a guy that went number 1 overall to Jacksonville out of the same school a couple of years ago, and I think they're very similar players. I'll be honest, of the first 16 picks of this draft, I think this might be the first true steal in the draft. Detroit moving up, getting aggressive as they have been under Brad Holmes, and getting Walker at 16. If I'm the rest of the NFC North right now, I might be a little scared of this pick. That's certainly, once Aiden Hutchinson gets back and healthy, hopefully as quickly as possible, that's going to be a very formidable front for Detroit. Minnesota, what are your thoughts about this? The Lions getting aggressive.
I don't like Deion's reaction, that's for sure. Yeah, you're getting a guy that is great pass rusher in the division that you already have, or on a team that you already have Aiden Hutchinson, obviously coming back from his injury. I'm glad that for the Vikings, I'm sure Hayes can speak for that as well, that we did put in work on our offensive line to kind of combat that a little bit. But great pick. I think there's a possibility you could have waited out a little bit. Maybe you could have made a trade or not had to trade all the way up to 16 for that. But hey, that was your guy and you went and got him. So yeah, kudos to you on that one.
And Green Bay, what do you think about this move? Again, Lions, they're really the class of the division right now, if you want to say that. And now they go and get, in my opinion, a blue chip prospect.
Personally, I don't want to say that, but Deion here was trying to trade with me first at 23, which I would have liked to slide down in the first round. I'll give that insight, but he felt he needed to go up and get his player, and I like the pick because I don't have Jalen Walker top 5 per se, but I think he's definitely a top 12 prospect. He's one of these guys that's going under the radar. A lot of what we have here in Green Bay and Edgerrin Cooper, a guy that you can put all over that defense. You can put him out weak side, put him hand in the dirt, rush the passer, and they need a guy opposite Aiden Hutchinson, of course, once he's healthy, and they just got their guy. So I think it's worth it for the Lions to go up and get a guy like him, and if he's sitting there at 16, that's a phenomenal pick.
And lastly, Chicago.
I hate it because I love it so much. It's a great deal. I think when you go out there and get an amazing talent, you're aggressive about going out there and getting them, and the havoc that he can wreak not only in the division but in the entire NFL. That is, I'm glad that Chicago spent the offseason shoring up their trenches, because if that move were to happen in real life, that's crazy. So great move here. You get a guy that's really underrated in this draft, and I think he's going to produce right away for the Detroit Lions.
So now let's bring the Arizona Cardinals back in here as we have the trade details finalized. Detroit moving up to 16, getting a 5th-round pick next year and 152 this year. Arizona moving back to 28, getting the 60th overall selection in this year's draft as well, and a 3rd-round draft choice next year. A relatively balanced trade all around, in my opinion, but the Lions cashing in on that 16th pick for Jalen Walker. Now, let's talk to Arizona. What motivated you to make this deal and moving back in the 1st round?
My guy flew off the board at 13 to the Miami Dolphins. It was Will Johnson. He was really high on my board. Really wanted to walk away with him. As soon as he went off the board, pick 16 became up for auction. Detroit flew in, and I was going to take somebody, but, he convinced with that 3rd round. We had some negotiation behind the scenes, and it went through. So, and again, I'm not even mad at the Jalen Walker pick. It's solid, but that's not where I would have went for Detroit personally, but it's solid.
So had you not been able to make the trade, who would the pick have been? And you said you wanted Will Johnson. Did none of the other defensive backs really jump out at you?
I mean, Barron's cool, but I feel like Will Johnson for our scheme, and Nick Rao is what we run, zone scheme. Will Johnson is just the clear best corner in this class in my eyes. This 2023, 2024 tape, excellent. That turf toe really lingered him, but there wasn't anybody flying out. And if I had to pick at this spot, I probably would have rocked somebody like a Kelvin Banks. When he tackle, we could swing guard as well. But I'm chilling with where we're at, getting 28 and 60. It's good value.
Understood. Really appreciate the insight and getting to pick your brain there a little bit about why this trade went down. Again, Detroit moving up to 16 and getting Walker out of Georgia. Now we move to 17, Cincinnati. The Bengals missing out on a playoff berth by about that much last season. A very topsy-turvy year, which saw them start very slow, which has become, I guess, an annual thing in Cincinnati. Closing very hot, but it was too little, too late for the Bengals. Losing a couple pieces this offseason, but locking up arguably their 3 most important pieces: Higgins, Chase, Burrow. Very, very long term on very, very big money. What do you do with 17, though, here?
Behind the scenes, let me tell you guys, there was a lot of willing and dealing. Shout out to my guys with the lines. We had a deal in place. Shout out to the Cardinals for not taking this guy at pick 17. You made a comment that you said that the biggest steal of the draft just happened just now, or whatever the pick before with Jalen Walker. I disagree. I think the biggest steal of the draft is happening right now at pick 17. We're going to change the face of this franchise with this deal, with this guy that I believe is going to be the Jamar Chase of our defense.
All right, and who is that guy going to be at 17?
This guy is going to be none other than linebacker from the Alabama Crimson Tide, Jahad Campbell. At pick 17, 120 tackles, 5 sacks. You can line him up everywhere. Versatile piece that you can go and create an identity on defense. The physicality is there. The mobility to be able to, or the agility to be able to run and chase down mobile quarterbacks like a Lamar Jackson, perhaps. Blitzing all over the place. This guy gives me an identity, and he gives me something that the Bengals have not had probably since Geno Atkins, a playmaker.
And he has great speed, too. You alluded to it. He ran a 4.52. He stands 6'3", 235, 117 tackles, including 12 for loss and 6 sacks. Last year, second-team All-America, first-team All-SEC. The Bengal defense has lost a lot of crucial pieces over the last couple of seasons. They look to rebuild that unit, starting with Campbell at 17. Now, the rest of their division, teams that traditionally have all been built on great defense. Let's get their thoughts on this pick for Cincinnati. Baltimore, what do you say?
Yeah, I mean, look, after watching Baltimore and Cincinnati play 2 games against each other last year and how offensive those games were, I mean, I think for Cincinnati, you have so many holes on defense. Why not get a guy that can play multiple at a high level? You got to start somewhere. And I mean, look, if Trey Hendrickson, if that whole situation does end up working out and Cincinnati brings him back and he's on the roster, signs an extension, I think Campbell's someone with his athleticism. I know a lot of people in Cleveland talk about JOK as like, oh, is he going to be the guy that can match up with Lamar Jackson on defense? I think every defense needs one of those in this division. So I think Cincinnati could have gone a couple different ways. Campbell is one of the guys I had my eye on for him. Actually, I would have liked if he fell to 27, but my plans were foiled there.
Cleveland, what do you have to say about Cincinnati?
Listen, it's a solid pick. You look at what they have on defense. They've had a lot of people moving around. Sam Hubbard retires. We don't know what's up with Trey Hendrickson. We know what Cincinnati can do on offense. Joe Burrow's not the problem. They finally ponied up and paid their guys. They got Higgins and Jamar Chase back. So you know what they're going to be able to do offensively. It's all about the defense and how well the defense is going to be able to stop some of these other teams for them to get over the hump. So you had a lot of holes. You start in the middle. You got a guy that can move around sideline to sideline, especially when you got Lamar Jackson in this division. Not to mention, if you want to go further, you got Josh Allen and some other mobile quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes. So I like the pick. Very solid pick for the Cincinnati Bengals.
So when Cincinnati went on their run to the Super Bowl in 2021 and when they got back to the AFC title game in 2022, it was because of their defense playing great, timely football. During the regular season, they weren't great statistically by any means, but they stepped up when it mattered most. And if Cincinnati wants to get back to the mountaintop in the AFC, I think that's going to need to happen again. And I think Campbell might be a guy that helps them get them there. Now, Pittsburgh, final thought before we move to the Seattle Seahawks and pick 18.
Yeah, Bengals need help on defense pretty bad. I don't know about the value, though, with the pick being a linebacker. I think linebackers slowly turning towards like the running back of defense with, just 2025 NFL and how it's being played on the perimeter. They need help all across the board on defense, but maybe they could have done better by going quarterback or something more on the perimeter. It makes sense, though, as to why, since he was thinking about trading back, just because some of the corners that already went and who's available on the board. But, I don't know about linebacker this early. I don't know if the value's there.
All right. Well, 2 good reviews, 1 iffy one at that. Now we go to Seattle, pick 18. We go back to the NFC West. I have a feeling that this is going to be a big-time pick for Seattle. What do you got?
Thank you. And it is indeed a big-time pick for the Seattle Seahawks. I did not think this player was going to be here when the Seahawks pick came up. I did not think this guy was going to make his way down here. But now that he is here, I don't think I can pass up on him. I am taking an edge rusher from Georgia, another Georgia linebacker. This is Mykel Williams. Mykel Williams of the Georgia Bulldogs. One of my favorite players in this draft. He's got big time length. He's got really long arms, really good at keeping blockers at bay, moves in space really well. He's got speed to power that is absolutely deadly. He played up and down that Georgia line. He played some edge. He played some one tech. He played some three tech. I don't know if all of that's going to translate to the NFL, but some of it will. And he is, in my opinion, one of the most high potential players in this draft. The issues with Mykel Williams to me are almost entirely just how raw he is. He's young. He doesn't have a full suite of pass rush moves yet. That's fine by me. The Seattle Seahawks, as of right now, have a good crop of edge rushers ready to play for 2025. And if Mykel Williams needs a year to really come along, then we can give him that year. So I'm taking Mykel Williams, and I'm really happy to have him, and I think he's going to be great if you give him a year or two.
I think it's a really solid pick. And how many guys that we've seen come out of Georgia the last couple of years with this same profile? Very raw, incredible talent, but you got to tap into it. And I think that Mike Macdonald might be the guy that gets the best out of him. 9 tackles for loss, 5 sacks last season for Georgia, a 2-time All-SEC selection. What do the rest of the division think about it, though? Let's go to Arizona first.
I love this pick. I really do. I think there's a lot to be coveted, though. Great run defender, great edge setter. But like he said, there's a lot to be coveted here. A super raw prospect. You want to see that pass rush develop a little bit. And even then, over 5 sacks. I don't remember exactly how many sacks he had, but just a really good prospect. Really raw, but he's going to come into his own. And Seattle has edge rushers, like he said, too. So, again, another unfortunate situation because Kyler Murray will continue to run for his life. And we're just dabbling in with Walter Nolan, now Mykel Williams. That's a great selection in my eyes. I can't hate. As much as I want to, I can't hate on it.
San Francisco, you went defense 7 picks ago. You see your division rival Seattle do it as well. What do you think about it?
It's a solid pick. It's one of the best edge rushers to me, especially when setting the edge. We just talked about that. I understand he's young. I understand he's raw. I thought he was also utilized wrong back in Georgia. I thought they should have just left him out there on the edge, and you would have saw more production from him at that position. But he's a solid pick, and it's going to be tough dealing with Mykel Williams. He's a giant out there on the edge, too. But with that, it's going to be tough.
Los Angeles Rams, you hit on an outside linebacker last year, big-time Rookie of the Year, Jared Verse. Do you think that Seattle will have similar success with Mykel Williams? I believe you're on mute there, Rams. If you could unmute, give us your take.
Yeah, I really like the pick. I don't think he's going to come right away and be like Jared Verse, who's one of the older pass rushers last year. But, he'll be 21 in his rookie season. And this is a guy that, at the very least, is going to provide a lot of help as a run defender. And I think that's really going to help out Seattle. And I think his long-term potential, he could be a franchise pass rusher for you if developed properly. And I trust McDonald at the end of the day. I think this is a great fit for him. And while you have other guys as well, you of course got Derek Hall and other guys that you got in the second round in years prior. This is a guy that McDonald can put his stamp on. So I like this one.
Totally agreeing with San Francisco seemingly taking a step back this offseason. It could really be a race for the NFC West this coming season. Now back to the NFC South, to Tampa Bay. The Buccaneers made the playoffs last year, but a disappointing playoff loss at home to Washington really, puts them in a position where they're 19th in the draft now, and I think there's still a few big-time players on the board. Are they going to take one of them?
Yeah, so no, you put it best, right? Like the Bucs, have a lot of decent players on the board right now, a lot of different options, and they need help on defense. They did get Hassan Reddick in free agency, and that helps out their pass rush a good bit as well. But head coach Todd Bowles said recently that the team needs more interceptions, and I'm going to get a guy that can help out with that. I'm going to be selecting Jahdae Barron, cornerback out of Texas, with my selection. Here's the thing. This guy has so much versatility. He can play nickel, he can play outside corner, he can play safety as well. Todd Bowles is a very creative guy, especially in the secondary. We've seen a lot of guys move around, playing a lot of different positions at safety, at nickel, outside. I think Jahdae Barron can fit very well in this defense, help get a lot of interceptions, had 5 last year for Texas as well. So he is my selection. I feel pretty good about this pick. I'm going to end his slide here at pick number 19.
Jahdae Barron, 5'11", 194, maybe a little bit undersized, but honestly, the last decade in the National Football League, I feel like corners have just gotten smaller and smaller and smaller, DBs in general. If we're being honest, but he's a speedster. He can keep up with guys. He ran a 4.39 this past combine. I like the pick, I really do. Let's get the rest of the NFC South back in here. An active division thus far in the 2025 draft. New Orleans Saints. Tampa Bay has won the division the past few years. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't have anything against Barron, but you mentioned, I mean, he's a little bit on the smaller side. And when you look at these wide receivers in the NFC South, these are big physical guys. So even though he can be able to keep up with them, my question is, will he be able to defend them? But, you know, I think that he has all the tools. He's a tough guy. He's going to continue to battle. But his size and sometimes, like, you know, I mean, those tackles, you know, that's a question as well. So how is he going to be able to match up against some of these wide receivers? But I think it's a good pick, good solid pick, but it could come back to cost him in the end if it doesn't work out.
And tackling with DBs these days, I mean, you know, I feel like it just gets worse and worse every year, even from professionals. I feel like I see these guys take terrible angles all the time, can't wrap up like they used to. I don't know, maybe it's just me and I watch too much old school football. But it certainly feels like the art of tackling has been lost a little bit, specifically by defensive backs. Anyway, Carolina, you paid a defensive back a boatload of money this offseason. Do you think that Tampa Bay has themselves a star?
Yeah, I mean, I love Jahdae Barron, man. The ball production is there. 5 interceptions on the season. The versatility, can spin back to safety, playing the nickel. He played a little bit in the boundary this year as well. I'm a little curious about the fit, just because I think they have Tyke Smith, similar play style in my opinion to him. But from what Barron can do, man, the way that Todd Bowles uses DBs in terms of just blitzing and just spinning them around up and deep and closer to the box and even manned up at times, I think it's a good player that you can pretty much put anywhere. He's going to be productive. Obviously, he's one of those guys that kind of just is always in the right place at the right time. You just really can't put a finger on it, but that's the type of player he is, and I just love Jahdae Barron. I love the pick.
And now we're wrapping up the NFC South with the Atlanta Falcons, the team that came in second place in this division. We're a game away from winning it and going to the playoffs. But what do you got with this pick? I believe you might be muted there, Atlanta. If you could unmute and give us your take. Now the Carolina Panthers with pick number 20. We saw a trade go down earlier where they traded back in the first round, ending at number 20. I believe it was the 8th pick that they gave up. I believe that was the number. They also gave up a couple picks later in the draft as well. The Panthers, like I said, alluding to that 8th pick that I thought they were going to make before the trade, they showed signs of life down the stretch. And the NFC South is a very, very volatile division. Seems like there's a team that pops out of nowhere just about every year and takes advantage of, the fact that it's seemingly, a turntable of who's good and who's not in this division. We've seen so many different teams, go on 3-year stretches of dominance or so. Tampa Bay's been that team lately, but is Carolina set up to be that team going forward with Bryce Young, with Dave Canales, with a team that has a lot of talent, even on the defensive side of the ball, which they struggled sometimes last year. But I think that they're maybe a year or two from turning the corner for real. First and foremost, I want to ask you a question. What do you predict Bryce Young will do in 2025? Do we see another leap forward for him? And then after that, give me your pick at number 20.
Yeah, I'm definitely expecting a leap forward for Bryce Young, man. Just incredible work down the stretch, playing some of the best ball in the league, top 10 quarterback ball, in my opinion, down the stretch. You ended on a good note, putting up 44 points on the Atlanta Falcons, winning in overtime. Just a lot of momentum going into the offseason. And Bryce talked about just his comfortability in the system. So more time on task is going to do nothing but help him play even better down the stretch. But for my pick, the defense needs a lot of help. The worst defense probably in NFL history by my mark. Gave up the most points ever, gave up the third most rushing yards ever, multiple 200-yard rushing games surrendered. But there was a lot of games that slipped from us down the stretch because we could not close out games. I'm thinking about the Chiefs game. I'm thinking about losing in overtime to the Bucs. So I want to get a closer on the pass rush end of it. And I'm going to go with Donovan Izaraku out of Boston College. Just a lot of production, 16 and a half sacks, over 20 tackles for loss. I love this guy's pass rush bag. He has 34-inch arms, and he's one of those guys that he uses all the length that he has with those arms to make those moves and get production. So we need that type of production up front. And it's going to make the rotation good. I wouldn't be surprised if we double dip in this draft, but I'm happy to get a guy like this after trading back and getting more picks.
A big-time pick here for sure, and you said it yourself. Carolina's defense was not good at all last season. Your worst defense of all time, apparently. But I think this is a move that could certainly move the needle a little bit for a unit that needs just about as much help as it can possibly get. Specifically against the run, like you said, they gave up, I think it was either three 200-yard games against them. I believe you said that, which is, an astronomical figure. But that being said, rest of the division, let's see what you have to say. Let's go to Atlanta first.
Yeah, I think it's a great pick. Donovan Izaraku, very active pass rusher, adds to what they've already done in free agency with Treshaun Wharton and Bobby Brown III. So it makes sense. You got to start adding a little bit more pieces to that defense, especially if you want to compete in such a high-powered offense like the NFC South. So, yeah, I like the pick of Donovan Izaraku to the Carolina Panthers.
New Orleans, what do you got for us about this pick?
I mean, this is such a Carolina Panthers pick right here. I mean, just because you got Luke Kuechly out of Boston College doesn't mean it's going to work again. Look, I would have thought they would have maybe go with like Malachi Starks or something like that, someone that can help them out in their secondary, go alongside J.C. Horn, but I digress. Look, I don't mind the pick, but I mean, I think they have some studs already. I think you already alluded to it, Berto. I think Bobby Brown could help him out. DJ Wanham, I know he dealt with some injuries, but he is a dog. So I don't know about this pick. I think that maybe they reached a little bit. I mean, you move up. I guess move down from 8 to 20 for this. I don't know, man. I don't know. I ain't feeling it.
Now, with Carolina, just a quick question for you, and this actually alludes to what the Saints GM was saying. Moving back from number 8, do you feel like you got a good value with this pick when you could have had your pick of any of the last 12 guys at number 8? Do you think that this was a good deal in hindsight?
I do, because we all know the historic trade we made to move up for Bryce Young. So we had to recoup some capital, and getting more top 100 picks was my goal coming into this draft. I think our GM, Dan Morgan, has put out the back signal that he wants to move back in this draft anyway. And so being able to pick up an extra second, an extra third, and a third next year, I love it. And in the draft class where a lot of people think that it can be murky from the 8 to 10 range all the way back to the 30s of who's who on the people's draft boards, I feel comfortable with the production I got here. And I'm picking again at 50 and again at 57. I'm sleeping good at night.
All right, sticking to your guns. Tampa Bay, give me a last word real quick about this pick.
Yeah, it's a solid pick. I mean, Carolina, you can never have enough good edge rushers, in my opinion. So to move back, still get a solid edge rusher. I like both moves that Aaron made. I feel like it was a very solid move to help out that defense. Like you said, one of the worst defenses in the NFL last year. So you bring in help. Can't complain at all. I think it's a very solid pick.
All righty. And now we move to the 21st pick. We're through 20 so far in this draft. 21 is back to the AFC North. The Pittsburgh Steelers making their selection in the first round here. Pittsburgh still don't know what they're doing at quarterback. I bet they hope they can get Aaron Rodgers into some black and gold. What are they going to do at 21, though?
I think he's coming here. I mean, if you heard him on the McAfee show today, all signs are pointing towards that happening. And I think we all know to win in this league, to win big in this league, you need an elite quarterback. And Garrett even asked me that during the number 2 pick reactions. What are the Steelers doing at quarterback? You just asked me that. I mean, that's the general question surrounding the Steelers right now. And with this 21st pick, I got answers. I already said for 2025, it's Aaron Rodgers. But what about the future? It's Jalen Milroe. Arguably the most gifted quarterback in this class, has a cannon for an arm. The running ability is off the charts. And people act like he's all upside. Boom or bust. He's unproven. But let's look at what he did at the SEC for these last 2 years. People talk about accuracy issues. Hey, he still threw for 65% completion percentage. His junior year, 35 total touchdowns, only 6 picks, led Alabama to the Final Four. And then his senior year in a whole new system had 36 total touchdowns and 11 picks. Like, come on. Yes, there are some things he needs to work on, no doubt. But with Aaron Rodgers being here, hopefully he's going to have some time to sit, develop for a year or two. And who better to learn from than a Hall of Famer, 4-time MVP than Aaron Rodgers? And even if Rodgers isn't here, I'm not going to front. I'm good with Mason Rudolph. Mason can cook. We saw him at the end of 2023. He did some damage against these AFC North teams. They would know. Yeah, we're not asking Milroe to start day one. I think that's the ideal scenario for him. He can get his game right, develop behind the scenes, and then in 2026, 2027, it's time.
So 2 questions for you real quick. We've seen, a guy like a Lamar Jackson come into the league as a raw prospect that needed to work on his throwing mechanics, that needed to do all this other stuff. We've seen him become an MVP in the National Football League. We've also seen guys come out like an Anthony Richardson, who in my opinion right now would be considered a bust and a failure. Having a guy like Jalen Milroe coming in, do you see more of Anthony Richardson or do you see more of Lamar Jackson in his future if you had to give me an answer right now?
I'm going Lamar Jackson because, as I said, Jalen Milroe actually proven in college. I mean, I went over the numbers, whereas Anthony Richardson, he didn't even sniff that in his, season? Yeah, it was only like a season and maybe a couple games at Florida. So, yeah, with Milroe, he actually proved that he could play at a pretty high level in the SEC already, and he's still got the upside. That's why I'm really intrigued with him. Guys like Anthony Richardson, guys like Trey Lance, getting picked in the top 5 with less proven in college, and I'm getting at least some of that proven from Milroe, showing that leadership, taking that Alabama team, but still has that type of upside that those players possess. So yeah, I'm leaning more Lamar Jackson if you're asking between the two.
All right, sticking to your guns. I like it. Now, let's go to your principal rival, the Baltimore Ravens. What do you think about this pick? You guys hit a home run on a guy just like this in 2018. What do you think about this draft choice in 2025?
Yeah, I thought there were 2 spots Pittsburgh could go with this, either quarterback or defensive line. And I think the defensive line class is deep enough where if you want to take a quarterback here with 21, there's enough depth in this class to go get a star at defensive line. Now, for Lamar Jackson, I think what Pittsburgh's plan here is with Aaron Rodgers coming for 2025 and then Jalen Milroe being in the future, Lamar sat behind Joe Flacco for half of his rookie season, and I think that really did end up helping him. So having the tutelage of Mike Tomlin in there and obviously Aaron Rodgers, assuming he goes, I think this is how you handle the quarterback situation outside of maybe what has been the new norm in the NFL, like with Anthony Richardson, Trey Lance, where everybody wants the next CJ Stroud. Everyone wants the next Jaden Daniels, who had that great rookie season, but sometimes they need a little more development. So I think Jalen Milroe's a solid pick here for Pittsburgh. It's not going to help him immediately, but I think when Pittsburgh needs a long-term answer at quarterback, and I think that with Sanders and Cam Ward off the board, teams are going to be starting to try to trade up for quarterbacks, and Pittsburgh gets ahead of the game here.
So Cincinnati, I'm going to ask you a question as well. Would you rather see Pittsburgh pick Jalen Milroe or Jackson Dart?
Jackson Dart. I do think the Jalen Milrows of the world, though, long term, you need a lot. Like to compare him to Lamar Jackson, I think is very unfair because what they did is structure the whole entire team around him, and Baltimore drafts better. And I just think that Anthony Richardson, although the comparison to the college it's not a fair comparison, I guess, to compare their collegiate careers. I think his profile and how he delivers the football is more closer to that. And I think the pick is probably justified, but that's the nature of the beast in the NFL. It's where you're constantly searching to go give you a quarterback that can be a game manager, that can take you to the playoffs and actually win you some games. And it's not that simple as like a lot of teams make it look. And I think the Steelers are going to find out that the hard way with Jalen Milrow.
Understood. In Cleveland, your thoughts about this selection?
This is major boomer bust. Either the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to get him, and they're going to be a menace to deal with in the division if he turns out to be all right, or they'll be back at the drawing board drafting again. I mean, they had, Big Ben, and prior to Big Ben, it was like Terry Bradshaw. Like, they don't miss very much on quarterbacks as of, in the previous 20 years. But, this is going to be a tough one. Jalen Milrow is not Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson was much more polished quarterback, much more polished thrower of the football. He is electric, and I will give them credit. Taking him here is a good place to take him because you can sit him behind somebody and let him chill out for a little bit. But he does have an elite skill set, and that's his legs and his athleticism. And besides Cam Ward being able to throw the football, I had him as the second biggest skill set in terms of his legs in the draft. So it's boom or bust, but we'll see what the Steelers can do with him.
Listen, man, I heard Big Ben. I heard Terry Bradshaw. Don't forget Neil O'Donnell took Pittsburgh to a Super Bowl appearance in 1995 too. All right, let's not forget Neil O'Donnell. He did throw two terrible interceptions in that football game. He did throw two terrible interceptions in that football game, and there were some conspiracy theories going around. But Neil O'Donnell did have a solid year in 1995 at least. Anyway, let's get back to the AFC West. The Chargers made the playoffs last year, and it all fell apart for Jim Harbaugh in his first year in LA in that playoff game going to Houston, and Justin Herbert just had the worst game of his career. They sit at 22 here. Still some very capable players on the board at 22. What are the Chargers going to do?
Man, what a fun experience it has been watching the Chargers transition into the Jim Harbaugh era. I think we're off to a pretty good start. 5-win team to an 11-win team, but we are not done yet building to the identity of Jim Harbaugh. The offense does need help, and I think a franchise running back would really put a dent in that issue. We're going to go with Omarion Hampton, running back out of North Carolina. You want a football player? This is a football player. The Chargers, yes, do have Najee Harris this season under contract for just 1 year, but talk about a nice 1-2 punch and a handing of the torch to RB1 Omarion Hampton in 2026, who is going to be a force for this offense, providing an identity to the run game that they are so desperately trying to create in Los Angeles. This is going to be a mean addition to that narrative. Finding success on the ground, so important to helping Justin Herbert, and finding success and a rhythm on offense is something that the Chargers are trying to build in the trenches, trying to build in physicality. This just fits all of the pieces that you're going to be needing from a guy that can run, a guy that can block, a guy that can catch. I was super giddy to see his name still available at 22. It's a lock and loaded Chargers offense going into the 25 season.
So I think this is a tremendous pick for the Chargers. Last year on 281 carries, went for over 1,600 yards, 17 total touchdowns. He's also a capable receiver out of the backfield, 373 yards receiving, two-time first-team All-America. And honestly, I think that this could be a home run for the Chargers. I really, really like this pick. Let's see if your division rivals like it as much as I do, though. Let's first off go to Denver.
Yeah, really nice value for the Chargers here. Obviously, one of the guys that I was kind of considering going into the process. So definitely a fan of Hampton. I don't know with Najee Harris, they're going to be able to close out games. That's the scary thing with this pick is that you're going to have two guys now that can do a lot of different things for you. And then you've got obviously Ladd McConkey. The only silver lining here is the Chargers didn't get one of the top two tight ends in the class. So definitely if you're a fan of any other AFC West team, you don't like to see the already physical Chargers getting even more so to be able to close out games.
Really taking on the identity of their head coach. It seems like everywhere Jim Harbaugh goes, within a year or two, his teams are him. Let's go to the Raiders. What do you think?
As much as I want to hit on this pick, I can't do it. I mean, you said it. You go to the Jim Harbaugh blueprint, you run the football, you're a physical football team. You saw that last year with J.K. Dobbins. You bring in Mekhi Becton at guard, so you improve the interior of your offensive line. Now you're bringing in Marion Hampton. Should be a top rushing team in the upcoming season. I can't hate on it as much as I want to. I want to badly hate on it, but I can't.
And lastly, Kansas City, your thoughts on Marion Hampton going to your division rival?
Great pick. You mentioned, they have a deep class here for running back. So being able to get this guy, it brings in the durability that the Chargers were really missing last season. Again, getting Najee Harris in free agency just adds to it. Do I want to see the Chargers get stronger? No. But this has always been the division rival that Kansas City has fought so closely with. Now, they played everyone very closely last season. I think the Chargers really have it in them this year. And if they're bolstering up this way, it's going to be a threat.
Now, was that 3 for 3 in the AFC West for a Charger pick? Did that actually just happen? All rave reviews for the Chargers. That must feel really good. You're beaming from ear to ear. If this happens in real life, I bet you will love it. Now, we have a draft trade to report. The Green Bay Packers and Houston Texans trading. Houston moving up to 23. The details right here. We have Green Bay moving back to 25, Houston moving up to 23. Green Bay also receiving 79 and 166 in this year's draft. Houston getting 89 in this year's draft. Only 2 picks. When something like this happens, it makes you think that whoever's trading up those 2 picks really, really wants someone. Let me get inside the brain of these 2 GMs before we make the pick official. Now, Green Bay, what is your logic here in moving down? Did Houston reach out to you, or are you moving back?
So I've been working all night trying to move back. I like the way the draft board's falling, but Houston did reach out to me, and I think moving back 2 spots is fine here to get another pick there in the 5th round and also upgrade our 3rd round pick. The Packers only have 8 draft selections, and the past 2 seasons they've had double-digit draft selections, so only moving back 2 spots. I really like the way the board is falling. I still think I'm going to get one of my favorite players here and just add another draft pick and, like I said, upgrade the 3rd.
All right, so confident feeling Green Bay and moving back to 25 and also bumping up those 3rd round draft choices. Now, Houston, what are you doing moving up 2 picks? Do you like someone a lot or what?
Yeah, I like someone a lot. I am looking at the offensive line here, and I will be selecting Kelvin Banks Jr., offensive tackle out of Texas. Look, C.J. Stroud was the 2nd most sacked quarterback in the NFL. You cannot have that going forward. And I have 2 options with Kelvin Banks. I could start him at tackle right away. The Houston Texans signed Cam Robinson, left tackle, in free agency, so you can have some competition there. I think Kelvin Banks wins that battle. Option number 2, if the Houston Texans want to go the 5 best O-linemen, Kelvin Banks, some people think he could end up being a really good guard as well. I love this move for the Houston Texans. I have no issue swapping 3rd round picks. The Houston Texans have 2 3rd round picks this season. C.J. Stroud is going to be happy. The Texans offensive line gets a much needed boost.
Kelvin Banks Jr. is the selection for Houston. I saw a lot of people, even pre-combine, having him closer to the top 10 than closer to 23. I think a great value pick for Houston here, getting an offensive lineman that they desperately need. C.J. Stroud, a down sophomore year. You do not want to head down that path. They're doing all they can to reinforce their front. Let's bring the AFC South back in. Indianapolis, what are your thoughts?
I think Kelvin Banks often offers a lot of upside. He can play guard, can play tackle. Really young player too, only 21 years old. He's played a lot of college football. Really good athlete as well. And we know the Houston Texans desperately need help on the offensive line. Yes, you bring in Cam Robinson, but Laramie Tunsil no longer there. So I think this is a good pick. Anything to protect your franchise quarterback, that's going to be a good fit.
I couldn't agree more, and nobody knows more than Indianapolis about not being able to protect a franchise quarterback and then it costing you down the road. Tennessee, what do you think about this choice?
Yeah, I actually agree with this pick as well, too. And I actually agree with the trade, given the other teams that were behind at that time. It's maybe possibly getting an offensive line. So I do think this is a good pick. Yes, you do have Cam Robinson. You do have Trent Brown. Cam Robinson's, he's so-so. So without Laramie Tunsil, I could actually see him playing guard at the beginning of the season and then eventually sliding over to tackle. So this is a value pick for sure. You need an offensive lineman. Yeah, I think I agree with the pick.
Jacksonville has made a big initiative this offseason to address their offensive line. What do you think about Houston doing the same? I think you're muted there, Jacksonville, if you can tap in.
Look, Will, Kelvin Banks Jr. played tackle, he played guard. I don't really think that Texans fans really care. They need to add to that offensive line, and I don't think they're going to be done. I think they're going to add some more offensive linemen on day 2 of the draft because this is a unit that desperately needs to get better because it was ultimately the thing that held Houston back from being able to advance in 2024.
All righty, so bunch of good reviews for this Kelvin Banks trade. And like I said, I thought he'd go closer to the top 10. He has fallen a little bit in draft boards as of late, but I think a great value for the Texans at 23. As you know, the Cleveland Browns traded with the Minnesota Vikings for this 24th pick. Minnesota moving out of the first round. They get the 33rd, 67th, and 179th overall selections. Cleveland back in the first round after selecting number 2 overall, Travis Hunter. Who are they taking at number 24?
Well, this is easy money. We was waiting there. We was nervous for a second because Pittsburgh could have took this guy off the board, but they chose Jalen Milroe. We're gonna go. Listen, we're going back to the Kevin Stefanski playbook. We about to run this football. We're gonna run play action through it. Jerry Jeudy had a breakout year last year. We already got who we feel is the best player in the draft, Travis Hunter, who's a 2-way star already. Get the jerseys ready. Listen, we running in with the pick at quarterback from Ole Miss, Jackson Dart, with pick number 24. And we'll redshirt him. He'll sit behind Joe Flacco. We'll even play Kenny Pickett. We'll put that red shirt on him and be ready to go in 26.
What a quarterback room that is. Deshaun Watson, Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, and now Jackson Dart. A lot of people very, very high on Dart. This is sort of a polarizing quarterback draft class, honestly. A lot of people, I think Cam Ward, the consensus number 1. Some people are higher than others on Sanders. Some people are higher than others on Jackson Dart. I guess we'll have to wait and see how it all pans out. But Cleveland has been in a weird situation at quarterback ever since making, that fateful trade for Deshaun Watson 2 seasons ago. But Dart, you can't argue with his production in college. Guy went 29 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, completed almost 70% of his passes for 4,279 yards. First team All-SEC last year, Gator Bowl MVP last year as well. I think I like the pick. It really is an insurance policy going forward at the quarterback position, assuming Deshaun Watson can't figure it out, assuming Joe Flacco is not going to be there for more than a year or 2 maybe, but a very solid pick at that. Now, the AFC North, man, I'll tell you right now, 2 quarterbacks selected. Pittsburgh takes Jalen Milroe, 21. Cincinnati and Baltimore obviously have their franchise guys. But can Jackson Dart be the franchise guy for Cleveland going forward? Cincinnati, your thoughts?
I'm I'm on the fence on this one. If it had been another franchise that doesn't have a history of ruining quarterbacks, then maybe I might feel a certain type of way. But watching them select them, it just feels different. I don't know. He talked about Stefanski. Who knows if Stefanski will even be there or how long he'll be there? We don't know. So I just don't know unless it's like the number one, like a Cam Ward or somebody that like I just don't think it's possible. Until I see it. I think at that spot, that's a good spot to get him, whether it was him or Milroe. I think that's the perfect spot to go get a quarterback that, doesn't have top 5 potential. And, I mean, it is what it is, and then it's up to you to coach him and put him in the best spots possible.
That being said, and, I've brought up a few poor draft picks in the past on this stream so far, but the last time the Browns took an SEC quarterback around 24, we all remember what happened there. Baltimore, what are your thoughts about this draft choice?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as high on Jackson Dart as others, but I think that, again, it's exactly a quarterback if you're going to do it. I think it is a perfect trade up scenario for Cleveland because this is the area where teams are going to want to trade up. And so if you want to sit Jackson Dart for a year behind guys like Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett, again, that's what I think should be done with quarterbacks in this range instead of putting them in, okay, you got to go out there and perform. It lessens the expectations and allows them to learn. There are a lot of good players still on the board here. So again, if Cleveland believes in Jackson Dart and that's their guy, then I'm okay with it. But I think that there are some other ways Cleveland could have gone with this selection. I like Jalen Milroe there. Obviously, Pittsburgh snuck up and took him before Cleveland got the opportunity. But I think that this is the range you'll probably see the rest of the quarterbacks go off the board, and all these other teams are going to have to turn their attention to Tyler Shuck and others.
And it is funny, too, because 3 trades were made, 23, 24, 25. And I think this is an area of the draft where teams will look to trade up for these quarterbacks. So I think this is playing out just like it will a week from now. Pittsburgh, final thoughts on the Jackson Dart selection?
I'm with Cincinnati. I'll believe it when I see it in terms of the Browns getting the quarterback position right. I think they would do better just by giving Pitt legend Kenny Pickett the keys and see what he can do than drafting another unproven guy in Jackson Dart and getting him in the fold with Flacco and Pickett. Why not just give Pickett the chance? But unfortunately for Pickett, because he's with the Browns, I don't necessarily see that working out for him either with his career. I'm one of the guys because, he's a Pitt guy. Also, he was drafted to the Steelers. I'm one of the guys that actually still thinks he has a chance to do something in this league. But now that he's with the Browns, it's going to be tough. And I think it's also going to be tough for a Jackson Dart.
Now, Browns, before we close out this pick, if you had to tell me right now who's going to be starting for your football team in September, I mean, I just saw a report earlier today that suggested that Deshaun Watson could be back. I mean, I don't know how. Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, now you have Jackson Dart. Who's starting for this team?
It'll be a quarterback competition, like
clearly,
the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Clearly, but I'm telling you, hey, who
is
is it going to be? Who's going to come out on top? I don't want the competition talk. Who's it going to be?
Joe Flacco.
I like
Flaccovelli himself will be the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns opening game 1 with a bandana on.
I like it, and I hope he is wearing a bandana at that. Now, the 25th overall selection was traded. The Texans moved up to 23. Green Bay moved back to 25. There were also other picks exchanged in that trade. But Green Bay now sitting at number 25. If we could bring both of those creators back in here to talk about what they think the ramifications of this trade are going to be. If we could go to Green Bay first. Packers still feeling confident about this deal? Think you're muted there, Green Bay, if you could tap in with us.
I'm on the mic, right? I'm good?
There we go. Yep, gotcha.
Okay, cool. Awesome. I think this is a good trade for both the Texans and I. I think both teams are going to make away with the pick that they wanted. And again, I think the Packers want more draft picks, and we have 8 total picks. Now we'll have 9. We'll also upgrade our 3rd round pick and still get a phenomenal player. So I still think this trade is a phenomenal trade down with the Texans.
Gotcha. And I know Houston definitely feeling confident about their Kelvin Banks trade. or selection, excuse me, via trade. So Green Bay, who you got at number 25?
So at 25, there was a couple options here because with the recent picks of Kelvin Banks, Jackson Dart, made a couple options available here, one of which was Shamar Stewart. But the player I'm going with is going to be defensive lineman Kenneth Grant out of Michigan. He was my number 2 defensive tackle on this entire draft class. And when I was looking between him and Shamar Stewart, it was which one will give us more now. And I think Kenneth Grant will, because the Packers lost TJ Slayton this offseason. And I think Kenneth Grant plugs right into the middle of that defense, a guy that can rush the passer, a guy that can hold up double teams. He can fill gaps. He's still a very young player at 21 years old, 6'4", 331 pounds. It fits right into the Packers' thresholds of what they like in the interior of their defensive line. He's also coming off an impressive pass rushing season at that nose tackle spot with 3 sacks, 27 pressures, 22 run stops. He's got a pass rush win rate of 9.4% and a run stop rate of 7.9%, and also one of the lowest missed tackle rates of all defensive linemen at 5.9%. I had him ranked a lot higher than this, so the trade down and the selection of Kenneth Grant, for me, is a home run for the Green Bay Packers.
We saw him really establish himself on Michigan's way to a national championship in 2023. And like you said, he was also tremendous in 2024. 3rd team All-America selection. Now, Minnesota, thoughts on this pick? I think it's a very solid one for Green Bay.
Yeah, this one hurts a little bit because sitting at 24, if I was not able to move back, my plan was to hopefully get Kenneth Grant as well. Like Alex said, 330 pounds, quick and athletic for his size, already good in the run game, has potential to be a game wrecker in the pass game as well. Something that would fit great for the Vikings in the fact that obviously with his trade back, he would have been available for my pick. I don't regret it though. I think there's a lot of good players available, and I felt like I got a lot of good value going into round 2. But overall, great pick. Though I still think the Packers still need to find themselves a legit wide receiver 1, and once again passed on that in the first round.
Gotcha. Now, Chicago. What do you think about your arch rival picking Kenneth Grant?
This is tremendous value for the place that they were able to select him at. Much like you said, I had him rated a lot higher than this, more so kind of towards the upper mid half of the first round. So to be able to get him here is just amazing value. He's going to be able to come in, great run stopper, big body, quick first step. He has just a lot of what you're looking for at that defensive tackle position. I think this is a really good pick here.
All right, and lastly, Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a Packer. It absolutely does. I'm glad that he brought that up. It's a Michigan defensive lineman that's big and has some athleticism. Like, yeah, that's a Packer. We'll plug him in. I think it's perfect. I mean, look, Green Bay last season needed more juice from the front four, so this is a hope that you add some of that. But the guy that always gives teams problems is Kenny Clark. He always slides under the radar. You put this guy next to him, the hope is that expands a little bit more, and then some of these young guys like Van Ness, those guys take off. I can understand, honestly, why he falls this far. I think it's very possible he does in real life, too. There's just consistency issues that I have with him, especially against run, which is his calling card early. But ultimately, for the Packers, this feels like a Packer. So good job, Bass.
Definitely does. And I'll tell you right now, he is a big cuss in the middle. I mean, this guy can move people, and I think he's going to be great in Green Bay. Now up to 26, the LA Rams, who were really a player or two away from making a surprise appearance in the NFC title game. They lost in a snow-filled Philadelphia Lincoln Financial Field in the divisional round. Like I said, almost made an epic comeback to win that football game. I think the Rams are in a very, very good spot here. This is only, their second first-round draft pick in the last 9 years. After getting Jared Verse last year, they're 1 for 1 in the last, almost decade. Can they go 2 for 2?
Well, I did try to trade out of this one. Unfortunately, things fell through, but with the 26th pick, the Rams are going to select wide receiver Luther Burden III out of Mizzou. I think he is a fantastic fit for the Rams. He's great after the catch. He's a dynamic inside slot player. And I think he has what I believe is the most potential of any receiver in this draft. Luther Burden, if you take all of the tape from all of the receivers, his 2023 film, I think outdoes every. I think it gives him a star caliber player long term. He's got the highest upside, like I said. I compare him to DJ Moore. It's a running back type of player that you have at wide receiver. You know, snappy route runner, really quick, makes guys miss, which is something I think the Rams really need to add to this roster. And the addition to Devontae Adams, that's great in the short term, but I think they give them a 1-2 punch with him and Puka Nacua in the long term. So I decided we were going to stay here, went with Luther Burden III.
Now, a lot of guys really had Burden as almost a top 5 pick, you know, going into last season. Granted, a down year in 2024. I don't think that was even his fault. I think Missouri's quarterback play definitely suffered compared to what it was the year prior when he was an absolute stud. 2023 second-team All-America, 2-time first-team All-SEC selection. Like I said, down year last year, 61 catches, 676 yards, and 6 touchdowns. The Rams get him at 26 to pair him with Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua. I think that could be a deadly trio for Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford. Let's bring the rest of the NFC West back in here. Let's start with the team that is going to be picking 28th, the Arizona Cardinals. What do the Cardinals have to say about this selection?
Me personally, I like Emeka Egbuka. If we're talking slot receivers, I think he's the best receiver overall in this class. I would rock Egbuka personally, but I understand wanting the ability to have someone who can come in here and make people miss. I like Egbuka. I think he would fit perfectly too alongside Devontae and Puka, but I can't hate on the selection. I think he's really solid in 2023, 2024. The upside was there, cracked 1,200 yards, had a down year last year. I understand the pick, but I would have leaned towards Emeka Egbuka personally.
San Francisco, your thoughts on this selection by the LA Rams?
I think this is an amazing pick. I mean, you got a guy that can line up outside, inside. You could do the same thing with Devontae Adams. So you kind of make the wide receiving position interchangeable. Like you lose Cooper Kupp, and then you upgrade with the Luther Burden III. So I think this is a really good pick for you guys. And I know next round I'm drafting the corner.
All right. So, quote, amazing from the San Francisco 49ers. What do we have from Seattle?
I think this is a good pick for a Sean McVay team. You know, Sean McVay likes to be in 11 personnel a lot. He likes to have those 3 receivers out there. So I think a guy like Luther Burden fits right in. I do think that he is primarily a slot guy. I do think that primarily he should be playing in the slot. I think if you put him outside, you lose some of the stuff that makes him great. But he's got great ball skills, makes plays all over the field. He's a vertical threat, great hands. I would just be cautious about trying to move him into a role that he's going to be less comfortable in. But a Sean McVay team that loves to play 11 personnel is just right for a player like this.
All right, so 3 solid reviews for the Luther Burden III pick. Like I said, going to last season, some people had him going in the top 5, let alone the top 10, but slid down to 26 after a disappointing 2024. I think he's going to be a stud in the National Football League, though, and I bet the Rams are one of the best spots he could possibly go to. Now at pick 27, the Baltimore Ravens. After losing at home in the AFC title game in 2023, they come back in 2024 and had another disappointing playoff defeat at Buffalo. They have the National Football League's MVP, Lamar Jackson, of 2023. In my opinion, should have won it again in 2024. But what do they do at 27 to address their needs?
Yeah, I don't think that this board could have fallen any more perfectly for the Ravens, especially because they've given themselves essentially positional freedom when it comes to the draft. They don't necessarily need anything so badly that they need to stray away from their board. I think you could talk about defensive line, corner, safety, edge, even on the offensive side of the ball, you can talk about offensive line. But there are a couple of guys in the secondary on the board, and I know that some people might think one is a better fit, but I'm going to go with Nicky Manwari, the safety out of South Carolina. Now, a lot of people say, well, the Ravens have Kyle Hamilton. What are you doing taking Nicky Manwari? The Ravens are a positionless defense in a lot of different ways. And I think with Manwari, 6'3", 220 pounds, and we saw one of the best combines ever for a player of his size. And I think that everybody's looking for their Kyle Hamilton, their Minka Fitzpatrick, Derwin James, of guys who can play up at the line for you, can blitz off of the edge. And even Worry, I think with him and Kyle Hamilton, in the Zach Orr defense, Baltimore can move him around. And I know that with Hamilton there, spending another first-round pick on a safety might not be in some people's cards, but the Ravens right now are waiting on Ardarius Washington, who has not signed his restricted free agent tender yet. I think that ideally you're able to move Hamilton around like a Swiss Army knife. You can put Nick Emenwari maybe as the strong safety and Ardarius Washington, assuming he does re-sign with Baltimore at that free safety spot. The upside for Nick Emenwari is absolutely immense, and I think for Baltimore, they want to take a swing on a guy like that if he's available.
And Emenwari is almost a throwback defensive player in his size. I mean, the guy is a big dude playing safety. You don't see that a lot these days. I feel like defensive backs, like I said earlier, have gotten smaller and smaller, as the years have progressed to try to keep up with the speed of receiver. But this guy's a big dude back there at safety. He was also a first-team All-America selection at South Carolina this past year. Cleveland, what do you think about the Baltimore Ravens, your former team, picking Nick Emenwari?
Man, is Ozzie Newsome still snooping around here? Because listen, this pick has his name written all over it. Man, I love this pick. I ain't even gonna hate. You can move him in the sub package. You can put him at linebacker. He can cover guys. He can spy on people. He's fast as heck. And when you throw Kyle Hamilton in with that, like, they got size and elite length in the back end, and you know how the Ravens play. They're going to be physical, they're going to be fast, and they just keep adding these type players. These are hybrids, and that's where the league is going to, hybrid players that can cover, that can tackle, and can do a lot of different things. I love the pick. I ain't even gonna lie. A+.
Now, if there's a team that has a great history of safety play, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. What are your thoughts on Emenwari going to your division rival Baltimore?
That's right. Shout out Troy Polamalu. Shout out Donnie Shell. Shout out Ryan Clark. Yeah, he's a good player. I'm not even going to front. But for the Ravens, they could use some help at linebacker. I don't think Trent Simpson's really lived up to the bill. And then at edge rusher as well. I mean, you might need some insurance for Owe. Ojabo hasn't lived up either. So, like, it's tough. I mean, I don't blame him for making this pick, but I think they do need some help on the front seven for the future. Because I don't see, like, Kyle Van Noy keeping it up to the degree that he's been able to either. But even more, he's solid. I'm not even going to front.
And a last word to the Cincinnati Bengals, who really need help at safety. I don't know if you're qualified to talk about safety play right now, but let's talk about it.
We got some guys there. Shout out to the Ravens who sent us Geno Stone. I don't know how that that happened or transpired. I will say this, Nick Emenwari. Had I not picked Jahad Campbell, I was going to go that route later in the draft. We do have safeties; they're just not at this level. His RAS score out of all qualifying strong safeties is the #1 out of 1,079 safeties since 1987. He's one of my favorite prospects in the draft. I think this is the best pick in the whole entire draft that I've seen thus far. I hope this doesn't happen in real life. I do think in real life, I keep on thinking the Steelers might draft him, but that, to me, out of all the picks I've seen, that's the scariest one that I've seen this whole entire time. Pairing him with Kyle Hamilton would be disgusting.
So a great, great draft choice for the Baltimore Ravens. I feel like we almost say that every year whenever they pick a guy relatively early. They have a fantastic and rich history of drafting very well. The aforementioned Ozzie Newsome started that, and it has continued even after he has left. Now, 28th overall selection, the Arizona Cardinals. Let's bring back in Detroit and Arizona, who made a trade, for the 16th pick in exchange for this 28th pick. Detroit also receives a 5th rounder next year and 152 this year. Arizona cashing in, getting 60 this season and a 3rd round draft choice next year. Now, after Detroit's pick at 16, what is Arizona going to do on the other side of this trade?
I think it's pretty easy for us right now. We need pass rush ability. We need someone who can get to the quarterback. I'm not going to go edge, but I'm going to stay with one of the better interior linemen when it comes to pass rushing. We're going to take Derek Harmon with pick 28. He's quick, has a super quick first step, quick hands. He can play 3-tech. I love this move personally, learning behind Calais Campbell, who's year 18, Dalvin Tomlinson, who's 32 years old. Really good pass rusher there. This is a young guy who can come in here and develop alongside Darius Robinson. I think this is an exceptional pick. I love the value here at 28.
Now, if we could bring the Detroit Lions GM back in really quick, I just want to ask a question here. If you had stayed at 28 with how the board has fallen, where do you think you would have gone, and would Harmon have been on your radar sitting at 28 had you stood pat?
He would have definitely been on the radar. I think, honestly, if I'm sitting in the spot, Malachi Starks would have been my pick. I like the flexibility for our back end, so I would have just plugged him in, found a spot for him somewhere. At this point, I'm trying not to really focus too much on needs, more so just guys that I think are going to find the field within the next 4 or 5 years. So I probably would have leaned that direction with a guy like Malachi Starks, or maybe took a swing on one of these edge rushers out there. Or honestly, I would have went Donovan Jackson. So probably Starks or Donovan Jackson.
Gotcha. And Harmon on the year for a great Oregon team. 45 tackles, 11 for loss, and 5 sacks. Second team All-Big Ten, second team All-America in 2024. Now let's bring in the Cardinals division rivals back in here. The NFC West has been busy. We just talked to you a minute ago about the Luther Burden selection for the Rams. Seattle, let's start with you. Defensive side of the ball for Jonathan Gannon and Arizona. What do you think?
Well, I got to be honest. I was kind of happy when the Niners picked Walter Nolan, because I think that Derek Harmon's a better player. And I'm like, okay, I don't have to deal with Derek Harmon now. Well, I got to deal with Derek Harmon anyway, it looks like. I really like Harmon. He was definitely my favorite player left in the draft. I like how wide he is. I like how long his arms are, really hard to get to his chest. He punches really well. 55 pressures last year, playing against tough competition for the most part. Maybe he's a little bit long-legged, which makes some movement stuff a little bit awkward, but I think Harmon might be the defensive tackle in this draft that has he has a lower floor than a guy like Mason Graham for sure, but he might have a little bit of a higher ceiling too. So I'm not happy about this one. I got to deal with this guy twice a year. I don't like that.
All right, so you know what? I'm going to ask all 4 of you a question. I'm going to open this up to the forum. All right? So you mentioned arm length, leg length. I mean, I call that the nerd stuff, all right? I'm not really a draft prognosticator myself, but I call that the nerd stuff because what does a guy's arm length and leg length have to do with his production in the National Football League? Honestly, that's my opinion. Do you guys really believe in that stuff? Like, do you think the length of the guy's legs is really going to prevent him from being a Pro Bowl player if he has the talent? We'll start with the LA Rams. What do you think?
I think it all depends.
It all depends. Okay.
Yeah, I would probably say, yeah, it definitely depends. If you have the talent, I don't think it's that big of a deal. And I do think there's kind of this analysis by, paralysis thing where it's just like you have too much here and you're trying to find any which way to discredit a player or to credit a player. And I think sometimes we stay, kind of lean a little bit towards what we already know on the tape. And we focus a little bit too much on the measurables, if I'm being honest.
100%.
I completely
Joe Burrow
agree.
Came out of the draft criticizing his team.
Yeah, and granted, Kenny Pickett didn't necessarily work out in Pittsburgh, but I remember the whole thing with his hand size and everybody saying, oh, this guy can't be a good NFL quarterback because he doesn't have big hands. Jalen Milroe apparently went through the same thing in his pre-draft process. So just on a personal note, I've never believed in that arm length. And Will Campbell, who New England picked earlier in this mock draft, his arm size came into question. I think a guy can play if a guy can play. But San Francisco, what do you think about this Derek Harmon pick?
Yeah, I think this is a great pick too. He's my number 3 defensive tackle on coming out of the draft. I think my only knock with him is just once he gets into the backfield, can he, if it's a running back, can he get there? Can he wrap and tackle? A lot of missed tackles for him, but overall, this guy's a solid pick. And the NFC West really just got defensively better. I mean, the Rams did it last year, and the rest of the teams are trying to catch up. So that's a solid pick for the Cardinals. Great pick. And they got Calais Campbell next to him, too, and he could be schooling. Oh, man, it's a great pick. Great pick.
And now we move to the number 29 selection, the Washington Commanders. We move into teams that made the conference title game last season. Teams like New England and Kansas City, who have had long, sustained periods of success, have made a killing in this part of the draft when they were at their best. Can Washington, a surprise team last year, winning 11 games for the first time in God knows how long, can they sustain that success, and can they have a good selection here at 29?
Yeah, honestly, this was tough. Had some trade offers. Washington only has 5 picks in this draft, so it is tempting to move back. But if the board falls this way, there's 2 guys I was looking at between Egbuka and Shamar Stewart. I have to go with the player I have higher rating, and it's also a need with Shamar Stewart, defensive end out of Texas A&M. I know we can talk about the production numbers. You can do the same with Nick Scorton, who showed that he was productive at Purdue before he transferred. But I think this is a guy that Dan Quinn cannot wait to get his hands on. He showed his athleticism, 6'5", 267. Also ran a 4.59 40-yard dash, 34-inch arms. I know you were talking about arm length, but he just showed on film when you go back to just check your notes that he can be that explosive guy off the edge. And he's still a younger prospect at 21 years old. You can refine him. He still has some things to grow on, but you can't teach size and that God-given ability and athleticism. So I think this is a home run pick at 29 for Washington.
Absolutely. And modest statistically in 2024, only a sack and a half, 6 tackles for loss. But in 2022, he was an SEC all-freshman selection. You talked about his measurables. They're absolutely off the charts. Running a 4.59 at that size shouldn't even be legal, okay? I mean, the guy is clearly an athletic freak. But let's bring in the rest of the NFC East. Obviously, Washington really behind Philadelphia, finishing technically as the second best team in the NFC last year, is a big-time surprise. And still are, apparently. Philadelphia, you beat them in a conference title game last season. Do you think this pick could maybe even put them over the edge?
I don't know if it's going to put them over the edge, but I think it's a start in the process to do that for sure. If you're getting someone who's able to get to the quarterback, I said this early on when we had a Giants pick as well early on, is when you build in the trenches, that's a good way to really form a mold here for sure. So I think that it's interesting to see the 2024 stats, but when you look at the athlete that he is, I do project him to be a stud. So it's a good start, no doubt about it.
Big Blue, what do you got?
I absolutely hate this pick. As a New York Giants fan who lives in the Washington, D.C. area, that just means they got better up front. And, they parted ways with a couple of first-round picks, from a couple of years ago in Chase Young, Montez Sweat. But bringing in a guy like that, I would have took either one of the pass rushers from over there. Nick Scorton was a guy I had my eyes on. You got to build the trenches for Washington. I was thinking they possibly might have went with Josh Simmons maybe on the offensive side of the ball. They do need a tackle over there as well. But building the trenches, you really can't go wrong.
And lastly, the Dallas Cowboys. What do you think about Washington's selection? Think you're on mute there, Dallas?
Yeah, I'm that pissed off about it. The thing is, it's a bummer to see any team in your division get good. And I know that we've kind of waxed poetic about one another. And I think in the first round, everybody tends to get good, obviously. That being said, honestly, the reason I trust this the most is the Dan Quinn factor. I've seen Dan Quinn work with a number of different defensive linemen in general, but he's certainly somebody that can get the best out of edge rush prospects. Dante Fowler obviously left, and that's somebody who Dan Quinn worked with all the way back at the University of Florida. If he can get his hands on somebody very early in their career, somebody who's young, still a little bit green and raw, I really feel like this is a perfect match. I understand the need to want to go offense, but I think that you're fine kind of trusting Jayden Daniels to lead the way on that side of the ball. So this is a bummer.
So great reviews for the 29th overall selection. And now looking at our best available prospects here, a team like Buffalo on deck 30. There is still one incredibly highly touted prospect, according to the Bleacher Report scouting department, Malachi Starks, number 4 on the big board, still on the board at number 30. Is Buffalo going to take him, or are they going to go elsewhere? I think he's a great prospect. Let's see what the Bills do with pick number 30 after coming up painstakingly short of a Super Bowl once again.
All right. Well, we've waited patiently. We were in conversation with some teams trying to figure out whether we need to move up or not. But it's clear. I think Bills fans understand this, that the defense is what we need to focus on this year. And more specifically, we're looking at the cornerback room or we're looking at the defensive tackle position. Right now, I'm sticking in the interior of the line. I get it. Harmon's gone. Grant's gone. But this is where I come in with Tyleek Williams. The big boy, 6'3", 327. What the Bills need is a guy that can really stop the run. That has been one of our issues down the stretch. Guys start getting hurt. Guys start getting a little complacent. So this is where you get the fresh legs coming in. And this is where this elite run stopping gap stopper can play the 1, can play the 3, and right up on the nose. This is what a versatile defensive lineman that Dermott has been looking for. I mean, we've had some guys. Ed Oliver's still developing. He's still that guy, but he's a little smaller. He's on the smaller side, right? DeQuan Jones is getting long in the tooth. You get a guy like Tyleik Williams coming in. Not only does it give you the ability to stop the run, but he gives you some pass rush ability. And now it moves the quarterback off his mark. And guess what? You got Greg Rousseau. You also have the newly touted Joey Bosa onto the squad right now. So this is where the Bills fortify the interior of their line. I mean, let's keep it real here. We're going up against Barkley this year. We're going to be going up against, obviously, the Baltimore Ravens with their run attack. So there are going to be some squads that we will need to shore up, tighten up on that defensive line. And if you take a look at it, Larry Ogunjobi's out for 6 weeks, and you've got Michael Hoyt out for 6 weeks. So Tyleik Williams fits right in. When these boys come in 6 weeks out, this defensive front is going to be something pretty scary. The offensive side of the ball is fine. We will shore up later in the draft, but this is where the Bills needed to strengthen up, and the defense interior with Tyleik Williams is where we're going to go.
Tyleik Williams, a member of the national championship winning Ohio State Buckeyes, 46 tackles, 8 for loss, 2.5 sacks from the interior of the Ohio State defensive line. Last season, 3rd team All Big Ten. Last year, 2nd team All Big Ten in 2023. Certainly a big guy in the middle that Buffalo could use to fortify that defensive front. The AFC East, let's bring them right back in. And let's start with the New York Jets. Haven't talked to the AFC East in a little while here. It's been a long break. What do the Jets have to say about this Buffalo selection?
Yeah, I like this pick. I think it's more of a position of need that Rico went with here. I do like Williams going to Buffalo. Like you mentioned, they struggle against the run, and this is somebody that you can definitely come in here and fortify the defensive line right away. But I do feel like it was a little bit of a reach. But outside of that, it's a position of need, so I understand the pick.
New England, what do you have to say?
Yeah, like Richie said, this might not be the best value pick, but at this point, this late into the first round, you're just looking to take someone that fills a major need for you, and this is exactly what this is. Building in the trenches, of course, we saw in the Super Bowl, 2 Super Bowls really, that if you want to beat Patrick Mahomes, which is the biggest struggle for the Buffalo Bills, you do have to have a defensive line that can stop the run, but more importantly, put pressure on Patrick Mahomes, and that's what this move does.
And last word to Miami about the 30th overall selection.
I'm actually highly disappointed in the Buffalo Bills. I was interested in this pick right here to see what they would do because the general manager for the Buffalo Bills didn't mention the Chiefs once. He had the nerve to actually mention the Ravens and other teams. They have to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, okay? How are they going to do that? By realizing that Josh Allen cannot beat the Chiefs alone. He needs more weapons. Keon Coleman isn't going to be enough. You should have went potentially in the wide receiver room. Or if you want to go on the defense, I understand that you have a need at the defensive tackle position, but this draft is loaded with them. You got to take a blue chip player, the last one left, Malachi Starks, work him in and have a versatility in that secondary.
Maybe they've thrown the white flag on beating Kansas City. They're just putting their hands up and they're saying, hey, we can't beat them.
Yeah, you're right.
We can't do
you're
it.
Right.
I mean, listen.
Right. That's what it is.
They weren't even mentioned. Maybe it just is out of the question at this point. They've done all they can. 2020, you lose the AFC title game. Or 2019, you lose the AFC title game. I'm mixing up my years here. Last year, you lose the AFC title game in heartbreaking fashion. Maybe it's just over for Buffalo. Maybe they just can't do it. Maybe.
I mean, listen, this is coming from a Patriots fan, so I get it. I understand.
It's called winning purgatory. Winning purgatory.
Yep, something
Never
like
win a
that.
Super Bowl.
Something like that. Well, you lose 4 in a row. It's a curse for sure. Now, going to the 31st overall pick, the aforementioned Kansas City Chiefs, losers of Super Bowl 59 this past year. They need to reload. I think they've had a solid offseason bringing back guys that they needed to bring back. They haven't really added anybody big, but this is a chance to do it at pick number 31. What say you? I think you're muted there. If you could unmute, make the selection.
They lost the Super Bowl, like you mentioned. Everyone got to see it, right? Everyone got what they wanted. They saw Patrick Mahomes lose on national television, and it was in a horrific fashion. He had to run for his entire life, like he did in Super Bowl 55 against Tampa Bay. He had no protection, and I think that's what Kansas City has to invest in. Now, this will be the third draft in a row where Kansas City is going to be drafting an offensive tackle, but I'm going out of Ohio State, and I'm going to put my luck with the 6'5", 317-pound Josh Simmons. No, he does have some knee injuries. He tore his left patellar tendon, and that was something that kept him out of the 2024 season. But before that, through 6 games, he didn't allow a single sack, a single pressure. This is someone who can help bolster up that offensive line and make sure that Patrick Mahomes is never left running for his life like he was in the Super Bowl. I think Kansas City has to address the offensive line issues. They put a Band-Aid over it over and over and over again. And what happens to a wound when you just put a Band-Aid on it? It bleeds through. So that's what we had to see, and hopefully Brett Veach and company will fix the actual wound.
And I think people are sort of forgetting about Josh Simmons. He didn't play all that much, like you said, in 2024, and I think he's sliding down draft boards because of it. We've seen that happen to a lot of people in the past. I think this is great value for Kansas City, as much as it pains me to say that. Now, I'm sure it'll pain the rest of the AFC West to admit that this is a great pick as well. Let's bring them in. Chargers, let's start with you. What do you have to say about Kansas City's selection of the offensive tackle?
Well, I hate to say it, but if the Harbaugh era has taught me anything, it's that building through the trenches is probably the way to a championship, and not that the Kansas City Chiefs need any more. Josh Simmons is a great value at that spot. And I think it's definitely a position you guys should be addressing this season through the draft.
And the Raiders.
Haley, is this finally the time that Kansas City Chiefs get it right at left tackle? Because how many swings are we going to take? How many swings are we going to take, Haley? We've been here how many times? And Josh Simmons is coming off an injury, so I have to ask you, is he going to be ready? Because if he's not going to be ready and Patrick Mahomes gets crushed in September and October, what's going to happen later on? I'm just asking you, is he going to be ready, and did you finally get it right this year?
Hey, that's the biggest question, right? We just got to at least get some competition going in training camp and see where the chips fall. But I'm going to put my faith in this kid being ready.
So, Mo, I have a question for you. You say swings and misses, okay? They've had, 2 swings and misses at left tackle, we'll say? They've had 2 legitimate swings and misses? That's the same number. Wait a second. That's the same number of Raider playoff appearances since 2002. So I think Kansas City is doing something right, although they can't seem to get it right at left tackle. I think they're doing something right elsewhere. Anyway, Broncos, what do you have to say?
Yeah, I hate to admit it. I like this pick a lot. I think Josh Simmons probably the best pure left tackle in this draft. And for Kansas City to take a risk on him here, I mean, like you said, you got to keep taking swings. There's nothing to do but get back in the batter's box. Like, they've churned over every other rock, right? You trade for Orlando Brown. You tried Kingsley Suamataia. You tried to throw Joe Tooney out there. Try to swing again and get maybe the best left tackle in the class.
All right, Mo, I'll give you a chance to get back at me here. I know I gave you a little dig there. What do you got?
Can we get an impartial commish here? Like, we taking shots? I mean, is this a Patriot Raider thing? I mean, Tom Brady's not wearing the silver and black, so you may be. I get it, commish. Tom Brady's not wearing silver and black, so you're a bit bitter. But all I'm saying is, at some point, you got to get it right, because Patrick Mahomes can't keep taking these beatings in the Super Bowl. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Eagles this past year. You got to finally get it right. Hopefully for your sake, not for the Raiders' sake, but for your sake, Haley, they do get it right finally.
I was going to say, hopefully for your sake, they get it wrong again. Now, with the 32nd and final selection in the first round of this mock draft, we go to the reigning, defending, undisputed Super Bowl champions, the Philadelphia Eagles, selecting 32nd overall. What are they going to do to bolster this Super Bowl winning roster?
there's definitely some good defensive ends still left on the table, and knowing you lost a lot of power on that side of the ball in free agency, I would like to lean that way, but with Stark still available, I just don't know how you don't value that at this particular time. And you can slot him in with, you got Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Jalen Carter. You can have this unbelievable youth in the secondary and up front as well. And it's just too good to be true that he fell kind of on your lap right there. So that's the route I would go, even though there's probably more need, with air quotes, at defensive end and DT. But Starks, you can't pass up on another Georgia Bulldog.
I was going to say yet another Georgia player. And I'll tell you right now, how many times in the last 5 years or so have the Eagles just had studs fall right into their lap, no matter where they are in the draft? I feel like they somehow find them. The Eagles are a stud finder, I call them. 77 tackles, 4 for loss, 3 passes defended, and an interception. He's really a Swiss Army knife on the defensive side of the ball. A first-team All-America last year and a 2-time first-team All-SEC selection. Let's bring the NFC East in to cap it off here. Washington, what do you have to say about this Philadelphia choice?
Starks was tempting at 29, honestly, just because he is that good, and Washington needs some safety help as well. But like I said, another Georgia Bulldog falling to the Eagles. We've seen how this turns out every single year. I absolutely hate it. They traded away C.J. Gardner-Johnson, so they do need some help in that secondary, and you can put Starks wherever he really does want to fit in and where he feels more comfortable. Still a young prospect, has great ball skills, high IQ guy. I think he actually fits in with their secondary. So I do hate this, but nonetheless, Jaden Daniels is still going to get his, so we're good.
Dallas Cowboys, what do you got to say about the Malachi Starks pick?
I think some of this is just general Eagles are really good fatigue. And so in that sense, this isn't the scariest possible thing that could happen from a Cowboys perspective, in my opinion. I think I would be more nervous if they'd beefed up. We've talked a lot about the trenches relative to this division. But that being said, I in no way feel like this is a bad pick. I feel like this is always a team that's going to find a way, even something that looks a little bit different. And again, awkward is not the right word, but something that is maybe not what we all would have agreed upon is the best course of action. It will still work out. They have the benefit of the doubt in that particular sense. I would have done something differently, but again, I'm inclined to say that Philadelphia probably did the right thing here.
So this late in the first round, we've seen, time and time again, it's all about best available. At least on the Bleacher Report scouting department, they had him number 4, and he fell to 32. So at least in terms of that, an unbelievable value, for Philadelphia. Now, we have closed out the first 32 selections, the entire first round of the Bleacher Report 2025 Creator Mock Draft. Let's recap our picks. At number 1 overall, the Tennessee Titans, selected Cam Ward. Travis Hunter going 2 to Cleveland. Abdul Carter falling to Big Blue at number 3. A lot of speculation he might go to Cleveland, but ends up with the Giants. New England goes Will Campbell. Mason Graham, 5th overall to Jacksonville. Shadur Sanders shaking it up, going to the Raiders at number 6. Tyler Warren to the Jets at 7. Ashton Genty via trade. Denver trading up to get him at number 8. McMillan to the Saints at 9. Membao to the Bears at number 10. That rounds out the top 10. Walter Nolan, Matthew Golden, Will Johnson, Colston Loveland, and Mike Green, 11 through 15. Jalen Walker, Lions trading up into the first round, being aggressive, going to get their next outside linebacker. Jahad Campbell to Cincinnati, a much-needed defensive piece for them at 17. Michael Williams, Jade Barron, and Donovan Ezerakwu. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name again. Going to Carolina at 20. Jalen Milroe, a quarterback pick for Pittsburgh. Omarion Hampton, 22. Kelvin Banks, 23. A trade swapping the 25th and 23rd selections. Houston moving up to get Banks. Jackson Dart going to Cleveland. A very interesting quarterback situation is going to unfold this offseason if that transpires. Kenneth Grant to Green Bay at 25. Luther Burden III to the Rams, creating a big-time trio of receivers out there. Nick Emenwari 27th to Baltimore. Derek Harmon, 28th. The Cardinals trading back in the first round with Detroit. That's their selection after the trade. Shamar Stewart, an outside linebacker from Texas A&M, going to Washington at 29. Tyleik Williams, the Buffalo, the defensive lineman, going 30th. Josh Simmons going 31st to Kansas City. And Malachi Starks falling all the way to 32 and Philadelphia in this draft. I want to thank all of the creators and all of you guys watching. The second annual Bleacher Report Creator Mock Draft was a big-time success. Thank you so much for joining us. I've been your host, Nate LaJoy, and we'll talk to you soon.